Hey guys, Sly here, and before we get into this video, I just want to let you guys know that this is actually a re-upload of a part of a series that I do on my Twitch channel called the Sly Army Tierlists, where we pretty much rank a bunch of just random topics that I'm personally interested in. And so, because of that, these opinions are not set in stone for how I feel about in the current day. And so if you guys want a more updated version of that, feel free to either check out the DeviantArt link down below or tune in on my Twitch that will also be in the description, or check out my Discord where I occasionally post some more updated versions of how I feel about certain topics. And so do keep that in mind. And also make sure to check out the description of the video itself for the timestamps for the particular topic that is presented here. But in any event, I hope you guys do at least enjoy. I recommend you guys listen to this as either like a podcast form or as just something to play in the background. But in any event, hope you guys at least enjoy. Hey guys, Sly here, and welcome back to yet another tier list and yet another audio technical difficulty. Yay! Hold on, let me get the soundboard, because I deserve this, because this is my fault. This is my fault, ladies and gentlemen. I fucked up for once. So, but in any event, I am here with the one,
Big
the
Joseph.
only.
Big Joseph.
Yeah. Audio's
Big
working!
Joseph. Hooray!
Okay, yeah, no. For whatever reason, my audio thing was not allowing them to talk, and that was pretty lame. And because of that,
Well, yeah, there was no audio from my end on Twitch for some reason, and so we had to restart the stream. Thankfully,
yeah, no,
our
for
friend,
whatever reason, it was going through OBS, and it was going through like Discord, but Twitch wasn't catching it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's dumb. So
Thankfully, our good friend Dylan, aka Zombie Slayer 2948 hashtag plug, managed to catch the problem early. So
yes, thank you, Dylan.
thanks, Dylan. Love you, boo.
You said that in the metalcore one too, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, no, this is the first. We're finally doing another tier list with someone, which makes me happy. Not that, the past couple of ones were bad. It's just I like doing tier lists with other people, and it makes me happy whenever we do, because we have some agreements, we have some disagreements, but at the end of the day, it's discussion that matters.
It's good content, yeah.
And at the end of the day, the good content is typically with the music itself, though we can't do it because of a copyright. But this is actually going to be a kind of a special stream, and this is the first for the tier list series, where it's actually technically a two-parter mini-series that we're doing. So
Indeed, yeah,
because
we
talked about metalcore and post-hardcore, we talked about emo music, we talked about new metal music. It's only natural for us to finally end this season with the grunge tier list. So, and then later on down the line, we'll talk about post-grunge as our finale. Yeah. So yeah, this is a pretty exciting topic, considering that this is like the earliest in the timeline that we'll be talking about music. Sure, we've talked about, some stuff earlier from before, that, such as in the Christmas tier list, as well as in the game tier list that the games that I played tier list. But in terms of just the general content, this is as far back as we will go, or at least for now. It's not that it's not that I hate everything from before the 1990s, because there are some artists from between the 50s and the 80s that I do respect. However, that's just before my time, and I rather would focus on stuff, even though this topic is technically before our time as well, because we were born in the late 90s. This is still something that I at least resonate with because of just how much influence this had. So, which, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Were you going to say anything?
No, I wasn't going to say anything. You're
okay. I just wanted to make sure, because I heard you try to say something. So
no, you're okay.
Okay, so yeah, unlike most people, I am not an asshole. So I might act like a douchebag, but I'm not one in real life. Because douchebags are not cool. But
I
in any event, so yeah, we're going to be ranking a bunch of bands that are considered grunge, or at least grunge adjacent. So you I don't feel like I really need to explain what grunge is too much, because I think most people have at least heard of the term, though I will kind of talk about it for those who don't know. So do you kind of want to talk about it a little bit? I'll bring up the definition. You kind of want to talk about like the history. So
Yeah, so grunge, it's a style of music that started off in like the early 90s or like 1990, like 1990.
mid
The
80s,
first,
but it got popular in the early 90s.
yeah. And so it started originally, it's most associated with Seattle over in Washington. There is a
Same.
common misconception with a lot of these bands that you have to be from Seattle to be considered a grunge band.
You
That's
don't.
entirely not true. Anybody who says that is lying to you, or probably
Mm.
some kind of elitist. Um,
We'll
but
talk about that in a little bit as well.
yeah, basically the whole movement formed as kind of a direct counterculture to the debauchery and hedonism and excess of a lot of the certain styles of music in the 80s, like a lot of the hair metal bands like Whitesnake, Poison, Def Leppard, those types of bands, and so even some of the thrash metal bands as well, because it was starting to start up over in the Bay Area, over in California. You had
Mm-hmm.
bands like Slayer and Metallica, and so it basically grunge was it was one of the first types of music to form in direct protest to that specific type of lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. And it honestly, I would personally describe it as the first modern rock era. I mean, yes, there are some elements that do seem like it's still kind of associated with classic rock, but it was really like the first time that were like it was more relatable to like the people who both were in the bands as well as the people who actually listened to the music. Like it was the first like movement where there was a direct connection with the artists and like the fans of these said artists, because beforehand, like what they were saying, like what Kai was saying in the 80s, thrash and like glam metal, they kind of like glorified the idea of the rock and roll classic rock lifestyle that was popular from like the 60s up
The
until the 80s. So
fornication, libations, and rock and roll.
exactly. And the thing is that like it really was it's kind of ironic though, because yes, it was built in like direct protest, but grunge itself took a lot of inspiration from a lot of 70s acts, specifically a lot of like the doom metal bands, like Black Sabbath, as well as like the punk movement that happened in the late 70s and early 80s. It sort of just combined like classic heavy metal with like the punk ethos. Throw in like some band, give or take a few bands that like would distort their guitars, because that was a big no, because you
Yeah,
don't distort your guitars. Because I don't know, just for whatever reason you just didn't do that. But generally
unless it's
speaking,
metal.
yeah, unless if it's metal. But grunge ain't metal. But whatever, you get my point. Is that like it was like
Yeah,
one of the first movements, since the punk era, and even you can even argue that the punk era kind of had the whole idea of like drug use, unless you were straight edge, but that's a whole other topic. Um, but like I don't know, whatever. You get my point. Is that like it was like the first movement, like mainstream movement, anyways, and first movement to go outside of its region to really exemplify just this sort of relationship between the listener and the musicians themselves. And honestly, this would continue throughout all the eras that we even talked about. Like even like, like whether it be new metal, emo, metalcore even, these movements still had, direct ties to the grunge movement, simply just because a lot of these other like bands that we've talked about in the other tier lists were built upon the foundations of what grunge was, already set up in
mhm.
terms of
And
sound and in terms of, you know, relatability. Because at the end of the day,
yeah,
that's what really mattered to a lot of people, was that like the music itself was more relatable and like less glorification and rather just,
And Kurt,
interpersonal.
Kurt Cobain himself was directly inspired by a lot of those like older punk bands like Dead Kennedys and the Misfits, and so you can definitely kind of hear that in
Mm-hmm.
a lot of this type of music.
And yeah, just the whole idea of alternative culture just really started with grunge. I mean, you can technically say the punk movement kind of started that, but like again, that was extremely underground. So like it wasn't like widespread.
Yeah,
Grunge
grunge
was
is when
though.
it officially broke out into the mainstream.
So, but yeah, no. And it, like you said, there were many grunge bands. As a matter of fact, I went through a deep dive of, grunge bands like I typically do with these lists, but I was thoroughly surprised with how many grunge bands there were, because like there's only like 6 or 7 bands that people talk about that are grunge, at most. But I was actually able to get a list of around 75 bands or so. So that's the amount that we have on this list, making this the shortest music list that we have so far. And I guess this sort of leads into just exactly what the basically, okay, this leads us into like the rules that we have for this list, right? So, well, as we, nice segue. Totally not a jangled up segue. Sorry, it's just I'm just not used to being able to be around people, so if I stumble some words, I do apologize.
No, yeah, it's been a minute, folks. So give us some leeway.
Yeah. But in any event, let's just go over like the rules that I have. So number one, just like with all of our other, genre lists, the band has to have released either 3 albums or half of their discography that counts as the genre. So for example, if a band, made grunge music, but then later moved on to like, I don't know, like rap rock or something like that, they don't count. And so that's what we're judging it off of. And you'd be surprised with some of these bands that are on the list that you might think, well, they're not really, didn't sound grunge after a while, but I can make a good case that like a lot of their stuff post a certain era still had a lot of those same sounds, just revitalized. So that's interesting. Another rule that I have actually relates to, the post-grunge label that we mentioned earlier. So I will admit that some of the bands that are on this list, people would not consider grunge, but rather post-grunge. And there are some bands that people thought that we left out that people consider, regular grunge, but slight spoiler, we're going to put them in the post-grunge list. The reason why is that if I am going to be a little bit honest, while yes, post-grunge has, some notable differences between, that and regular grunge, mostly like lyrical content, I don't really focus on the lyrics as much when determining what counts as a part of a genre and what doesn't. I mostly focus on the sound. And so bands like, I don't know, Collective Soul or Live, or hell, even the Goo Goo Dolls, I will count on this list because they had debuts before a certain time frame, which in this case will be 1995. Because in my opinion, the grunge era essentially was from 1990 to 1994. That was like when grunge was like pretty much at its peak, right? Directly correlating with the death of Kurt Cobain. So obviously just not pointing, I'm just pointing that out because it's kind of true.
Indeed.
So basically any band who had a debut album, regardless of whether it was a studio album or just a normal album, if it came out before 1994, it counts on the list. Though there is one exception, but only because of a technicality, because of when like the actual songs were made. I'll talk about that when we get to it. But basically any band from 1995 onwards, we're going to treat as post-grunge. Because to me, post-genres are representative of an era rather than the sound itself, if that makes sense. We'll talk about that more in the post-grunge tier list, but you'll understand what I mean once we get to that. So, And then the third stipulation that I have on here, and even like most people are probably going to disagree with this point even more. How even Kai disagreed with this a little bit, but I'm just going to explain myself. So, most of you who've watched these streams before, you know that I am someone who is kind of, I don't want to say a genre. I'm not a genre. As a matter of fact, I feel like I'm just like a genre just critic or whatever. Because like meaning that like I acknowledge that, you know, music genres do exist, and that there are baseline genres that do exist, like obviously rock, punk, and metal, and then there's subgenres that fit within those categories. But I do feel like people do tend to take some of these a little bit too far and add arbitrary differences to the point where it just feels like it's a forced name just for the sake of it being its own thing. At least in my opinion. So, you know, things like stoner rock and jangle pop, and how even like noise, like music, I don't know. It just, to me, some of these genres do kind of tend to sound similar to other genres that were popular at the time. And I'd rather have more generalized ideas of certain genres rather than being hyper specific about it. Otherwise, it gets way too confusing for people to, like, you know, understand what we're talking about. So, if that makes sense. So, again, you don't have to agree with me on that, but if you're going to be a stickler about it, then go cry about it. So,
yeah, and it's just keep in mind that at the end of the day, this is just our opinions, man.
yeah, that's
like,
the other thing. Just
we're
this is
just
our
two
opinion at the end
nerds.
of the
We're
day.
just two nerds on the internet ranting about music that we like. So don't take anything that we say too seriously.
Yeah. But leading into that, actually we'll talk about the different styles of grunge, not subgenres of grunge, but whatever. The other stipulation that I forgot to mention in our previous take is that you'd be surprised with how many grunge bands there were. As a matter of fact, I was shocked that there were like as many grunge bands as there were. Like, there were bands that like barely anyone's even heard of. And that made me think that like I shouldn't really be covering bands that are, you know, only have a certain amount of listeners on Spotify. Because the thing is that like there are certain bands that we've even talked about before that only had like what 600, 700 listeners on Spotify. And
yeah, not a
well, while I was doing research for this, literally, and I'm not kidding, I found a band that had, you know, that was considered grunge, that had, guess how many listeners they had?
Didn't they have like 9?
6. Not
6,
600,
yeah.
not 6,000, not 600,000. 6
Single
in
digit.
total digit. And meaning that I'm technically more successful than them. Not to brag, but that makes me feel like an asshole if I were to judge them, because like that's not fair to judge, you know, a band like an underground band like that. Like, especially, you know, a grunge band from like 30 years ago that no one's ever heard of. Like, that to me just feels shitty to do. And so as a result, I basically made a cap to where if a band has less than 10K listeners on Spotify, I'm not going to cover them. There's one exception to that rule, but only because I really want to promote them, because I think they're really cool. We'll get to that band when we get to it, but point being is that generally speaking, if it's an obscure as hell band, I'd rather not cover them, because I don't want to feel like a douchebag. Especially since there were some bands that I've talked about before that were obscure that I gave them like D's and F tiers. And just looking back on it, I kind of feel like a douchebag for doing so. As a result, and this will basically apply from this point onwards. So in the next tier list, we'll make sure to cover bands that do meet that criteria. So, yeah, you think that's cool?
Hell yeah, let's do it.
So, and again, at the end of the day, this is just our personal opinions, like we already said. If you disagree with us, that's fine. Go ahead, disagree with us. As a matter of fact, if you want to make your own list, this will be posted once we're done with. This list will be posted on my Discord, my personal Discord server, on its own channel. So make sure to check out the Discord whenever you can if you want to find this list.
The
But
link to the
yeah,
actual place to go and make the tier list will be linked, as well as these live streams are always advocated on Dave's Twitch channel. Or
yes, I
advocated.
document every single
Oh,
one of these because these take up way too much effort for me not to save these. So, but yeah, no. Before I get into the sub styles, do you have anything else to say before we get into it?
I'm all good. I'm ready when you are, my friend.
All right, so there, like before, there's different sub styles of grunge music that I've like kind of deduced. So we're not going to play the game like we did before, but just keep in mind just the different, you know, styles of grunge that there are, because there's multiple. It's a varied genre, you know. It's multifaceted,
Yeah.
like most other genres. So first of all, you've got your basic grunge, also what I like to call like punk grunge. These kind of are basically, you know, your baseline grunge, bands like Nirvana and Stone Temple Pilots, where they kind of just, you know, are considered grunge, yet they have punk tendencies. Pretty basic, right? Then you've got
Yeah.
the more metal-based grunge bands, such as Soundgarden and the Melvins, that take more inspiration from, like, you know, the doom metal bands of the 70s and, you know, even some other, like, subsequent heavy metal genres. So, there's that. Before I continue, were you going to say anything?
Mm.
Okay, sorry. You keep like wanting to say something, so I don't want to make sure you're
That's
losing
okay.
your train of thought.
I'm not like actually saying anything. I'm just like interjecting and just like agreeing with you to keep the natural
Oh,
flow of conversation going.
okay. Sorry, just making sure. Anyways, and then there's the jangle pop thing that I mentioned to you, because like whenever we did our first take, you were confused on what that was about.
Yeah, I had
So
no idea what Jangle Pop was, and I still
um,
don't.
basically, from what I understand, it's basically like rock music that takes a lot of inspiration from like country sounds. Like it's basically distorted country music. Um,
Mm.
but like the thing is that a lot of the bands that are considered jangle pop, a lot of them kind of sound like grunge in the sense of like having that distorted like guitar sound and that punk ethos. But bands that kind of are included in that include Collective Soul, Bare Naked Ladies, and Counting Crows. We'll talk about them obviously later. And then you've got your psychedelic inspired bands, so Stone Temple Pilots, Smashing Pumpkins, and Blind Melon come to mind, basically taking inspiration from, you know, the psychedelic bands of the late 60s and super early 70s. Then you've got your more prog inspired bands, mostly Radiohead and surprisingly Pearl Jam, if you actually take a deep dive on their album 10. Um, basically taking a lot of elements from prog music. And then you've got your more pop influenced bands such as Everclear and surprisingly the band Blur, even though the lead singer of Blur hates grunge, but we'll touch down that, we'll get that down to that road when we get there. But it's
Cross
basically
that bridge when we get there. Yeah.
it's basically bands that, you know, take a lot of inspiration from pop music. And keep in mind that this same logic does apply to post grunge, where there's bands of these 6 types of grunge music that coalesce into those. So, and I'll remind you guys next time whenever we talk about it. So, but yeah, no. I think it's about time we get into this. Though I think we should save the big 4 for last, just so that we end on a positive note. So,
I agree.
so regardless, do you want to go first or should I go first?
Go ahead and start us off, my friend.
All right, so I think we should probably get this band out of the way, simply just because Twitch does not like a certain word. Although,
Yes. Wait, hold on. Let me get mine ready.
so if you know, okay, ready?
Yeah.
So, do you guys know the name of what this is called? It's obviously a Cheez-Its, but it's a Cheez-Its Yeah. We can't say it because apparently Twitch hates the
Here,
word, so
look at this one.
oh
What
my
color?
god.
What color is?
Yeah. So we're gonna talk about a band that's named that. Yes, there's actually a band that calls themselves that. Um but
I'm sure
honestly,
they're
I would
probably referring to the confectionery snack. At least
yeah,
I hope
it's
that's what
it's
they're
it's
talking
it's
about.
probably
But
referring to the confectionery snack, which is why I put a confectionery snack on their logo because I thought it was funny. Um, but honestly though, they're I would probably put these guys in like D tier.
no,
Yeah, a pretty bad spot already.
yeah, I'm glad you agree. No, it's just they're bad.
Yeah, like the thing is that like they are one of the more generic style of like bands, like, and honestly they were kind of forgettable. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna try to listen to them now. Thankfully I made it to where the audio won't bleed through, but like, yeah, no, these were one of the country jangle pop inspired bands, and they aren't very good. So because it leans more into the country side of grunge, and it's not very good. So
No. And like, I like country. I will defend some country, the stuff that isn't like super patriotic and shit. But no, this is just bad.
where'd you put them?
Also, D.
Oh, that would have been funny if you put them in F already.
Oh no, no. You'll. I think you'll be surprised. You'll like what my first F is.
All right, fair enough. All right, so yeah, that's that band. I don't think. Do I need to say anything else about?
No, no. Let's just move on.
Yeah,
They're not
it's
even worth
probably.
talking about that deeply, really.
That's the other thing. Okay, this is another common thing. Before we move on, I feel like a lot of the reason why a lot of these bands are forgotten is probably because they weren't very good in the first place. Because
Yeah.
like, to be fair, there's some bands that will be higher, but man, I don't know.
there was
It
the
might be
there
because
was
it's before our time. Because again, we were born after the fact. But like, I don't know, man. Like,
there was a lot of crud to sort through with this one, sort of like with the new metal tier list.
yeah, people forget just how bad some of these grunge bands are. Though, I think we should probably talk about one that I think is a little bit better. L7.
Ooh,
This is a
okay.
this
Go
is a
for it.
female-led group, which there's actually a lot of female-led groups in grunge, which is something I have to actually commend because not a lot of females were lead singers up until this point, except for like Joan Jetson and or Jet is it Joan Jetson? Jonah Jet, I don't remember her name. She was big back in like
Pretty
the
sure it's
late 80s.
Joan
But
Jett?
anyways, I Joan Jett. Sorry. Anyways, so yeah,
No,
respectable in that aspect, and I would probably put them this group. I'd probably put them in a B tier. They are kind of a one-hit wonder though, but besides "Pretend We're Dead," which is their biggest song, "Bricks Are Heavy" is a fine album overall, I'd say. "Smell the Magic," which is their debut. No, that was their second album. It was all right too. To me, in general, they're just one of those bands where if they're playing in the background, I wouldn't mind. So
yeah. I put them a little bit lower. I put them in a high C. I put them in C just because I agree that the music is definitely serviceable, but I feel like it's slightly generic. And I mean, the vocalist has a pretty voice. I think her vocals are actually one of the biggest highlights of the band.
mhm.
But no, overall, nothing about their music really stood out to me. I put them in high C.
Yeah, especially since they're like kind of like half pop, half like punk grunge style. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. All right. Do you have anything else to say, or is that it?
No.
Okay, that's fair enough. Next up, I feel like I should probably get the two exceptions out of the way. if that's fine with you.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so Malfunction. So this is the exception that I mentioned where they had a debut after 1994, but the thing is that a bunch of their music was put into a compilation album um, from 1995 that they recorded back in the 80s. Because you have to remember, grunge started around the mid 80s. It just took a while for it to become popular by like 1990 and 1991. And so they were kind of underground at the time. But thanks to Eddie Vedder, he compiled a lot of this stuff and basically worked with like the record label to produce this album. And if I'm gonna be honest though, I don't think this was very good. Like, I get the meaning, like the intent was, fair enough. Obviously you wanted to make
Hold
sure
on,
that
so
this music was
re-
preserved.
re-
You know,
refresh me on which band we're talking about for a second.
Malfunction,
I disassociated. I'm okay.
Malfunction. They have like a purple label.
Yeah.
So, and I'm pretty sure, unfortunately, one of the drummers did pass away, which that's gonna unfortunately be a common thing that we do have to talk about. It's unavoidable. Like a lot of these bands did have members
Uh,
that did pass away. Um,
And
so
interestingly, most of it was a lot of them Kurt Cobained themselves. Not the exact same way, but
yeah, a lot of them unfortunately suffered that, especially one recently just this year too, which we'll talk about them in a little bit, but it is unfortunate. But that being said, in terms of just this album, I hate to do this, but I'm probably going to put this in a low C. It just, to me, just kind of feels half baked. Granted, to be fair, it was compiled from like a bunch of songs that they made in the mid 80s, but it wasn't really produced well. So that's my thing. I hate to disrespect the band in that regard, but I mean, if you want to look it up, it's an interesting it's an interesting like history about the making of that album, but
it has
overall,
an interesting history. And no, yeah, I'm pretty much the same way. No, it's like I have a lot of respect for the background that this band had, and I was a little bit more generous with my ranking just because of the fact I gave them a little bit more leeway just because of the material they were given and the way that like Eddie wanted to do things. I feel like they did kind of suffer for it due to circumstances that were kind of out of their control. But I
mhm,
put them just slightly above L7, so still C, but like it's like just under B.
mhm, fair enough. All right, and the other exception to this, like rule that I have, the less than 10K thing, and this will be the last band before we move on to you, because again, every 4 bands we switch, is a band called Hammerbox. So this is a kind of more. This is the most obscure band on the list. Only had about 5,000, 6,000 listeners on Spotify, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit surprised with this particular band. The instrumentation and like just the lyric, like the vocal delivery, I thought was way better than they had any right to be, especially for a band this obscure. And so I don't know about you, but I'm putting them in A tier. So, I
Mm.
mean, yeah, again, they kind of were a one-hit wonder because their song "Trip" was the album that blew up, but the entire like their self-titled and their album "Numb" are pretty good. It sucked that they only had 2 albums though, but in terms of like another female-led grunge band, they actually are pretty damn good. So,
No,
and I've
yeah,
been listening to them a lot.
hmm um,
What?
sorry, I was correcting something for a second. No, yeah, I definitely agree. This band, in terms of female-led grunge bands, I would definitely put them way above L7. I ended up putting them in also in just in a high A. Um, their first album especially, I like that one. That one's probably my favorite. But no, good ass band. You should check them out if you haven't already.
What tier did you put them in?
A.
Based. All right, it's your turn. Which, by the way, we're actually getting these done faster than we typically do, which is
Okay.
nice.
He's better than. All right, so we're gonna start off with my very first F tier,
Oh
uh,
no.
Oasis.
F.
Yeah,
F.
no, like honestly, it's not
We'll
even
get
really
into
a
why they
question.
count, by the way. So.
They're a one-hit wonder band, anyways, and the one song of theirs that everybody knows isn't even very good, and it's most associated with people around campfires who can't play the guitar trying to do covers of it to get laid. So no, just this is a bad band. Not even worth to listening to. Ironically,
But they're popular on Spotify, therefore they're doing something right. They have 16 million listeners on Spotify. Oh, Oasis. A band
this is
that I'm kind of saddened that they count. No, okay. So, I know the argument that people are going to bring up is, oh, they don't even count anyways, they're Britpop. Here's a hot take about Britpop. A lot of it just sounds like British grunge. Not all of it, but a lot of it does. It's basically, because Britpop was basically, like, coined just to basically go against grunge, ironically enough. But a lot of it just ends up sounding like grunge. I'm
no,
sorry
yeah,
if that offended every British person in the world. But, like, man, Oasis, God. I called them post grunge in our first tier list because we talked about them before. But no, they actually count. They count as actual grunge. They had an album in 1994 that sucked. And obviously, 1995 with Wonderwall. And then pretty much everything after that, which most people would probably even agree with me, though, that, like, after 1997, they went down really, really bad. So people agree with me on that, but even though that's a thing, their early material is still just bland and forgettable. Like, it just is just, it's just distorted acoustic, like, radio, like, music. That's basically what
mhm.
Oasis is. And they're only known
Yeah,
for, like,
it,
one song, and that song low-key sucks.
it does honestly. Also, just the
Today,
lead
wanna
singer.
be a land and it wanna be
Today is gonna be the day that is gonna be the day that is gonna be the day.
like,
No,
it's bad.
no, thank you. But yeah,
There's
that's
better
band number
British
two.
bands
No, there
on
totally
this
is.
list too, by the way. So
Exactly. No, and we'll get to them. But okay, so that's band number one. Uh, band number two. Let's talk about Blur.
another
So not just
British band. No,
yeah,
they're not grunge though. The lead singer said so. He hates grunge. Even though song
dude,
2 is literally a grunge
listen to the
song.
music. Nah, dude, yeah, listen to the music. So song two is basically just British smells like Teen Spirit.
It literally is. But okay,
But
but
not
actually before you mention them, I actually do kind of want to talk about why they also count because I listened to
yeah,
their
go for it.
first album Leisure. Leisure is literally a grunge album.
No,
It's
I was
literally
gonna bring
grunge.
that up. Oh no, Leisure is definitely a grunge album. And but no, like memes and jokes aside, I am actually a very big fan of Blur. I'm a big fan of Damon Albarn in general, not just Gorillaz, but
Yep.
Blur and
Forgot
some
to
of his
mention
solo
that.
music
It's
as
the
well.
guy who did Gorillaz later down the line.
Yeah, and his solo music is also pretty good too. But I will admit they did kind of fall off a bit later on in their discography. But their first like two or three or four albums, I'd say, are pretty solid stuff. So I put
Mhm.
them in B tier.
Honestly, I'd probably put these guys in high B, low A. Because this might be a hot take, especially for Frenchino, but I actually think Blur is better than Gorillaz overall. Because, like, I really like just their instrumentation. Yeah, sometimes Damon's vocals can be a bit, got you that ocean. Like, it can be, like, a bit misunderstanding at points. But in
Yeah,
terms of the instrumentation, they actually do pretty damn good. Especially for a band, that does the whole, fake grunge thing. Like, basically, ironically push away from grunge, but literally made, like, several albums that are grunge. Not all their songs are grunge. They tend to go into pop a lot in their albums, but there's a lot of genre mixing. So that's why
right.
they can, especially on, like I said, Leisure, they're self-titled, and on Park Life, surprisingly enough. And all those albums are pretty good, as well as everything in between. Not so much their latest album, though, The Magic Whip. That album was not very good. But other than that, I would still recommend them. Even if they don't consider themselves grunge, they're at least punk adjacent anyways. So at the end of the day, they're still good in that regard. So,
Yeah.
next
All right.
band.
So next band number 3. All right. So we're gonna talk about. Let's go ahead and get one of the other bands that might be slightly controversial for some viewers out of the way. Electric Wizard.
I knew you were going to bring this up at some point.
So Electric Wizard, it's one of those bands, kind of like what Dave was talking about earlier, where they definitely lean more into the doom metal genre. But some people call them stoner metal. But for the sake of this show, where we don't really consider that to be a real genre, that doesn't really apply here. But there are, even outside of the doom metal stuff, if you listen to some of their albums outside of Dope Throne, which admittedly is their best album, but there are definitely elements of certain grunge bands in their music, and so that's why we included them on this list. But no,
Yeah,
I
Melvin's
fucking
for
love,
sure.
and Melvin's too. But no, I fucking love this band. Like high key, they're at least top 3 favorite bands on this whole list. So I put them in S tier.
If I'm going to be honest, and you're going to hate me for this, they're not like they're not a D or F tier. Like, they're not that low. But I always go back and forth between on whether I like this band or not. Because, like we mentioned, they're one of those bands that does cross between, like a band like Black Sabbath and then, like, something like a Soundgarden or even a Kiss, which we'll talk about later. But the thing is that, like, sometimes the music just sounds a bit too slow, and as a result, it just feels a bit boring to me. That being said, in terms of, like, doom metal adjacent stuff, they're definitely one of the better bands, if not like amongst like top 5. I do agree on that. But in terms of what I'm looking for with this style of music, whether it be like, sludge, stoner, which obviously, like I said, we're just kind of using grunge as like an overarch for that. It's not really my style. I will put them in a B tier for the benefit of the doubt, considering that, like, in terms of their style, they're one of the better ones, but, like, again, that's not really saying much for me. So,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, you're all good. That's understandable.
At least I put them higher.
Yeah. Okay.
Got one more band.
Sorry, I know what my last band is that I'm talking about. There's some specific things that I want to talk about with this band, and for that I need to look up the lyrics. But so for the last band, we're going to talk about a band that because of my personal opinion on this band, some people might find it slightly controversial. It might lose me some respect points on this channel, but I don't care. We're going to talk about Mother Love Bone. Honestly, D tier.
I disagree, but I understand where you're coming from.
Like, so, okay. Now, let me get this out of the way beforehand. I listened to Apple earlier today. I listened to it twice. Once just to hear the music, and once to understand the lyrics and figure out and hear all of that. And to be fair, there are a lot of songs on that album that are really good. Like the opener for the album, This Is Shangri-La, that song, it slaps. It's really catchy, and I love it. It's a perfect opening album. But like, I feel like a lot of the songs on the album kind of sound like a really cheap imitation of some of the stuff that Motley Crue did, like way back in the days of like Dr. Feelgood or like even Theater of Pain. And just, I don't know. Listening to a lot of it just made me think about how much I'd much rather be listening to those albums. And just there's a lot of songs. There's one that have a lot of really, in my opinion, cringeworthy and kind of questionable lyrical content. Like for example, there's a song towards the end of the album called Capricorn. No, not Capricorn Sister. It's a Captain High Top, and the opener, the one of the opening lines for the album is, "I'm the instigator of the me generation, the official semenator of the female population, baby." And it's
Oh,
like
okay, that's
the chorus
understandable.
the chorus is the chorus is Captain High Top, the love commander. I'm the ego star forever after. Captain High Top, the love commander. Hide your mom, control your sister. And I'm just like that's kind of gross. I don't like that. But
Okay,
I mean,
actually, you convinced me now that I should probably put them in a B tier at the very like highest.
but like no, despite the fact that there are a lot of songs on here that in my opinion are quite good, but the amount of songs that I didn't like just barely like I actually did some like proper math with this one. So I listened to the album and I took all
Make
of the
this your
songs
last
that I
point, just
liked.
so that we can continue this.
I took all the songs I liked, all the songs that I didn't like, and I put it into a fraction, and then I converted that fraction into a percentage, which I converted into a letter grade, and they got a D. So,
Wait, what was the percentage?
7 out of 13, and that was about 53% if you round up.
Well, then that would probably be like a C then, because we're not the American education system when it comes to like our like gradings
Yeah,
in our
well,
tiers.
you know what? I don't like the band very much anyway. So they're still going in D tier. I don't know. I wanted to like this band a lot more than I did, but no, just ultimately
Yeah,
I
I
found
I
their
was gonna bring up the fact that like the lyrics are kind of cringe, which is why they're not going up in A or S tier. Which is why I mentioned I understand.
a lot
Um,
of the instrumentals are solid, I
yeah,
will say.
instrumentals fucking slap on this album. That's what really holds it up. And hell, even like the vocal delivery of the lead singer, which unfortunately, rest in peace, the lead singer, because the album came out like a week or two after the lead singer passed away,
Yeah,
which
it
is
was
why they
crazy.
never really, garnered much
But I
outside this.
definitely say he's one of the more competent grunge vocalists from the earlier days of the genre.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just, in terms of just that, that's why I really at least appreciate the band. Though, yes, similar to a certain other band we talked about last time, Head PE, they might have questionable lyrics, unfortunately. So, but in terms of like them being an older band and them being, only having one album, I can at least try to give them a little bit more leeway because they never had the opportunity to grow. So
Mhm.
that's why I'm being a little bit more kind. Though I do understand why it's not for you because like yeah, no, some of
Yeah,
those lyrics can be pretty
and
bad.
it sucks because, like I said, I really wanted to like this band and their album, but I don't know. I just couldn't. Anyways, I believe it's your
Well,
turn now.
want to talk about a band that I felt like a lot of people made me want to like, but I ended up just hating?
Go for it.
Collective Soul.
Yeah, I know you don't like Collective Soul very much.
Where are you gonna put them?
I put them in B because I'm quite the. I can admit that the band isn't perfect, but I'm actually quite the fan. Just,
I'm gonna put them in F. Literally
damn, really?
a band
Really?
that literally tries so fucking hard. Okay, here's the thing. They're one of those bands on this list that a lot of people would consider to be post-grunge. However, for the sake of this list, we're just gonna call them grunge. But god damn, man, like the production is so bad because like a lot of it just sounds like fake instrumentals, and that really annoys the fuck out of us. Now, granted, oh, that's
Maybe
hypocritical
it's just
because your music is like fake music, but like they're trying to be a grunge band. They're trying to
yeah.
like sound like a lot of their
Maybe it just
music.
yeah. Maybe that kind of stuff just doesn't bother me because I frequently listen to like Death Grips and Meshuggah and like a lot of black metal music that kind of sounds like shit.
But like,
But
but like, but like, here's the thing. At least with Meshuggah, they are actually using instruments, and they sound like they're actual guitars. for whatever reason, on their album Hence Allegations and Everything Left Unsaid, it literally sounds like just fake music. I don't know like how to describe it without playing it, but can't play it. But a lot of it just sounds like it's, run through like some sort of computer software. Like, it's really hard for me to like describe it. But it just sounds so flat and shitty. Not to mention the freaking lyrics. Oh my god. Because it's like, I know they're technically not a Christian band, but it sounds a lot like Christian, like rock music for whatever reason. Especially their
They do
song Shiver
kind
and
of,
Shine.
yeah, they do left definitely walk the line a lot.
Like, it just sounds so fake. And as a result, I just can't stand this band. Like, I know people are gonna be like, well, then just call it post grunge. No, these guys are grunge. There are shitty grunge bands, and this is one of them. So,
I like the group personally, but I can again, sort of like with me and Mother Love Bone, I can understand how they're not for you.
So,
Your opinion
and this is what I
valid.
wanted to point out too. There are bands that are grunge that are shit. And this is one of them.
Yeah,
But people
there's
deflect
quite
them
a
as a
few,
post-grunge
actually.
band as a result. But I'm here to basically tear that curtain down and say, I'm sorry, but there are some bands that are grunge that are bad.
Yeah, we gotta kind of rip off the Band-Aid a little bit at some point, guys. Excuse
Yeah,
me.
because like people glorify, grunge a lot. And while there are amazing bands in it, there were also a lot of shitty bands in it. And people need to recognize that. Now, granted, again, maybe we're biased because, again, this is before our time, but even compared to the greats, nah. Next band. That was my first band, right? Yes, it was. Let's talk about. Actually, speaking of false grunge, let's talk about Live.
Ooh, okay.
So, at first, I didn't really care for this band, like, because, like, at the end of the day, like, a lot of it did kind of sound generic. However, I recently got actually a physical copy of their most popular album. I can't remember the name of it.
Is it Google
Throwing
time?
Copper. That's right, Throwing Copper. I can see why people like it. Like, granted, it does seem like, unlike, similarly to Collective Soul, some of their music sounds like it would be religious music, but once you start listening to the lyrics, it's not. Like, trust me, like they have the presence of what a band would look, but unlike Collective Soul, where their lyrics definitely sound like it, Liv's lyrics don't, and so because of that, I'm more forgiving about them. And also, they have some like really actually decent tracks, like Lightning Crashes, their big song, All Over You, Selling the Drama. Like, I would consider them to be, in terms of like one of the bands near the end of the grunge era. Well, okay, they're technically older than the grunge era, but like their big sellout album came near the end. I respect them enough. I'd give them a B. So.
Yeah, I put them a little bit lower in C, but no, I can definitely see the appeal for this band, and I do agree that they do have a handful of bangers. But no, I myself just couldn't really bring myself to like them. Their particular brand of grunge just isn't for me. But
Yeah, because they're more on the
again, I can
pop
understand.
side. So.
Yeah, but again, I do see why a lot of people like them, and so I'm not going to judge them too harshly.
Mm-hmm. So there's that. Next up, should we get like another band that people question whether or not it's on the list, like should be on the list or not, out of the way?
Let's do it.
Because I think I need to explain this one, because this one might sound a bit weird.
Go for it.
Surprisingly enough, Sonic Youth actually counts for the list.
Mm-hmm.
So, because the thing is that not like, okay, two reasons why they count. Number one, they actually have 3 or 4 albums that I would count as grunge anyways. They're big, like mostly a lot of their albums from the early 90s, especially like their big, their most well-known album, I'd say. What's it called? Sorry, I'm not a Yeah, Dirty. It's basically a
Dirty,
grunge
yeah.
album. But it's not even just that album. I would also consider um Sister, Daydream Nation, and how even their album Goo to be grunge. So like their late 80s, early 90s stuff grunge. But not only that, but also they're kind of like how I feel about Rage Against the Machine as being a new metal band, where Sonic Youth is kind of at least one of the progenitors of grunge. I wouldn't say they're like the first band to be grunge. They're kind of one of those bands that kind of went on the scene later down the line, but unlike that, I would at least consider them to be at least one of the bands that was like a starter up for that sort of scene, because a lot of their music you know was definitely different from compared to a lot of other bands from the 80s. So because they are an 80s band, so
Mm-hmm.
and so that's kind of what I put them on here. As for me though, I will admit not all their songs I like. As a matter of fact, there's this one song, like one of their bigger songs, I freaking hate on Dirty. I don't remember the name of it, but it's like the I hate
Yeah,
you,
I know
I
exactly.
love you, I hate you, or
Yeah,
whatever the fuck it's called.
I know exactly what song you're talking
I
about. I also
hate that
dislike
song
the
so
song quite a
much.
bit. No, it's okay. Despite me not really liking that one specific song, I'm gonna be honest. I love Sonic Youth. My dad was a really big Sonic Youth fan, and so I grew up listening to a lot of their music. And so they're kind of a nostalgic band for me. I do still bump their music a lot, but man, listening to a lot of it with the gift of hindsight, a lot of it is just not very good. I really hate to say that, man, but as I've gotten older and more jaded, I've just realized, nah, a lot of it was pretty rough, and so I put them in low C.
Mm, I'll probably put them in C2 just because I fucking hate that song. So, though I'm gonna put them above Malfunction. They're like,
All
I'd
right,
say middle of the road.
yeah.
So at least for me. All
Just
right.
for me, I don't know. Honestly, they're a part of the '90s that I would honestly rather just forget.
Well, they're more of an 80s band, but they had hits from the 90s. So,
Yeah,
which yes, this is the first time we're covering bands from the 80s out like since the first tier list that we have ever done.
that's true.
So, that's a fun fact.
Yeah.
Um
Anyways, I think you have one more band.
yeah, I have one more band. Um let's talk about a band called Paw.
Ooh, alrighty.
I would probably
How?
put them in C tier as well. I don't know, just they go more into like the hardcore and more like punky, but like it kind of like a mix between like punk and like the metal side of grunge, and it's just not for me. So if you like it, that's fine, but I don't know. I just never really was a big fan of like classic hardcore style of music. So
I put them in B because I am a very big fan of that type of music. I love that shit. I breathe that shit. And so some of their like most of their albums are pretty good. I'd say a couple of them are kind of rough, but overall, nah, they're a pretty good band that I'm glad I hadn't discovered until recently, and I'm glad I did for the sake of this list because they're a solid listen in my opinion. Okay, so first band, let's see. Let's talk about I Hate God. So I Hate God, they're sort of in the same vein as Electric Wizard for us.
mhm.
Um, where
where
like
they're
in fact,
considered sludge, but I'm just gonna count as grunge just for the sake
yeah,
of
and the two of them make
simplification.
similar types of music, but no, for the sake of this tier list, yeah. But I do like this band a lot as well. I don't like them quite as much as I like Electric Wizard. I think Electric Wizard is just a bit higher. But I still put them in A tier. Especially their album. They put out an album in 2017. It was their self-titled. That album is, oh my god, it's so good. Definitely their best album in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I would probably put them in like a C tier because I already mentioned to you about how I already feel about Electric Wizard, where it's just not really my scene, and so as a result, I just don't really particularly like get with it. But in this case, it even less so because again, just that sort of you know slowness. I just it gets boring after a while for me. Like I'd rather have like fast enough pace to where it's like I like having that fine like middle ground between like slow music and fast music. If it's too fast, no. But if it's too slow, it's just boring. So
That's
I like having
understandable.
that middle ground. And they don't
Yeah.
offer that middle ground.
Yeah. All right. So next band. Um, let's talk about Bush. So Bush
It's a very
are
contentious
most.
one because they're one of the more hated bands. And they barely
Yeah,
count, by the way.
yeah, a lot of people don't really like Bush, and I don't know. I don't really understand why. They're most known for their 1994 album, 16 Stone, which I think that album is really good. Razorblade Suitcase is pretty good. It's not quite as good. It's a more mediocre than 16 Stone, but certainly not bad by any means. They're a little bit overhated, and while they're not perfect, I like them quite a bit, and so I put them in a lower B under Blur and Collective Soul, and another band that I'll talk about later.
I think the reason why they're not like respected is kind of it's honestly because a lot of their music is kind of forgettable. Like I don't know, just after like 16 Stone, it just kind of blurs away. I will admit 16 Stone is fine for what it is. But in terms of just everything that came after it, it just kind of blends into this sort of like weird homogenized sort of sound that I don't know. It's not bad by any means. Like I would say it's like serviceable background music, but at the same time L7 that's exactly what's about L7, but they have like, better instrumentals. So,
True.
though I'm not one of those people who hates them, so I'm going to put them in a C tier. They're they just exist for me.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, and so for my third band, let's talk about the Cranberries.
Ew.
So a lot of you who are watching this tier list probably know the Cranberries for their hit song "Zombie."
Rest in peace,
But
lead singer as well.
rest in peace, Dolores O'Riordan. Yeah, obviously. The thing was, so I'm sure those of you who know the original song probably heard the cover from Bad Wolves that came out in 2017. And
Ugh.
she was originally, yeah, right. Fuck Tommy Vexed. I'm just gonna say, like, that guy's a total d bag. But Dolores O'Riordan was originally supposed to appear on that cover, but then she died right as they were recording the song in late 2016. Um, but no, just specifically the album that Zombie is from, and their first three albums are fucking phenomenal. Like again, some of the best music on this tier list, in my opinion. I put them just under Electric Wizard in S tier.
Yeah, no need to argue. Everyone else is doing it, so why can't we? And to the faithful departed, those are the albums, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're more on like the I don't want to call it country because it's obviously not country. It's more like folk type of music because they're from Ireland. They're not like from the US or even the UK.
Yeah.
In terms of like obviously like they're most known for that song, but they actually are not a one-hit wonder. You would think that they are, but they're actually not. Because a lot of their other singles are just more popular in the UK and in Ireland because they're more popular over there overall. And they're fine for what they are. I'm gonna put them in B tier. I personally wouldn't say they're like amazing, but like in terms of like their big songs, I'd say they did pretty good enough, especially, Zombie, because like that song just is honestly just one of the saddest songs ever made cuz you know what it's about, right? Like it's about
Yeah. Yeah. It's about deja vu for not deja vu form. It's
No,
about like
it's
the aftermath of like warfare and the military industrial complex and the
well,
effect that war has on nations.
it's more specifically about an event that happened in Irish history called the Times of Troubles. Basically, from like the late '60s to the late '90s, there was an insurrection thing that was going on in like the northern parts of Ireland, and that resulted in thousands of deaths throughout this time period, and
Yeah,
it heavily affected the country of Ireland for a time, and yeah, it was kind of a tragic time period because it was a time of just uncertainty. So, and yeah, no, it's just because of that one song alone, they definitely get bumped up to like a higher. Actually, because of that one song alone, I'm gonna put them up in a higher B because I admit that is a pretty good song. And how even like "Ode to My Family," "Linger," and "Dreams" are also some of their great songs. That being said, for me, overall, they're more of a singles band, but they have really, really good singles. So that's kind of how I feel.
yeah, understandable. All right, so band number three. Um, let's see. Let's think here. Who should we talk about next?
Again, we're
I'm
saving
kind of
the biggest ones for last, so that we're
I
making
know.
everyone watch
I'm
this
kind of
tier
playing.
list. Ha
I'm
ha!
kind of
You have to
playing
watch this
eeny,
whole
meeny, miny,
stream
moe.
now.
All right, let's talk about one of the lower rated bands on this list, in my opinion. Some of you might disagree with me here, but Mudhoney. Honestly, like, I wanted to like this band so much. I really tried. I tried my best. I tried so hard to like this band, but it hurt me. It hurt my soul to go and listen to, and just, no, just D tier.
I hate to agree with you, but yeah, no, this isn't really good. D tier, because
Yeah.
it's mostly those vocals.
No, dude, the
Like,
vocals is he's so bad. He worked not quite as bad as Wes Scantlin, but he's pretty close.
what do you mean Wes Scantlin? As
Whoever
in,
whoever the vocalist of Puddle of Mud is.
oh yeah, that is Wes Scantlin. I thought you said the lead singer of Stone Temple Pilots, but no. Yeah, I agree with you. He has Wes Scantlin vocals, and it's pretty bad. So, uh, yeah, no, because the thing is that like this one they're another one of those like closer to like the sludge style of grunge, but like it just doesn't really work. Like even, and it's just not very good production at all. Because again, I'm more about that
It doesn't work
production.
at all.
So, granted, they're not the worst on this list, but yeah, no. That's all I've got to
All
say.
right. Yeah. And for my final band, um, let's talk about the Melvins. Let's get the Melvins out of the way.
Ew.
All right.
There is
So,
an elephant in the room about him, though, that I will have to say after you say your bit.
mhm. So I also am I am quite the fan of the Melvins. I've been a big Melvins fan for a while. They were one of the bands that kind of got me into the whole punk slash grunge scene. And so I have them in S tier, just under the Cranberries. Anyways, but no, yeah, Dave does bring up a very valid point about the lead singer that we're probably gonna have to get out of the way.
Yeah, he's kind of an asshole. Like, I just had to be blunt. Because he's one of those
Yeah,
people who, like, he acts like he's pretty, like, anti-political and whatnot, but, like, he's like one of those like anti SJW types.
yeah.
And
To him, something being political just means having anybody who isn't a straight white man.
yeah, it is kind of cringe, and it did taint the music for me because it kind of sucks. Because we've obviously mentioned the Melvins a lot, but it's mostly because they are one of the biggest cornerstones of grunge. Because they were the first band that a lot of people started calling grunge, like back in like
Yeah.
even late 80s. And they are a huge inspiration to even a lot of the big four of like grunge music. And in terms of like their early stuff, it's actually pretty good. Like their 1993 album Houdini, the album fucking slaps.
No,
Like,
dude, I love Houdini. That's my favorite album of theirs.
and then their 1994 album, yeah, Stoner Witch. Like basically everything from like Stag back was pretty good. And here's the thing that is kind of funny. I actually do like to compare the Melvins with Buckethead because they make so many goddamn albums. Like
No, yeah,
you,
it is. It does get a little bit wacky.
yeah, they have like what, like 25, 26 albums.
At least 26. Yeah,
Like, oh my god, they have a lot of material. But with
it's
me at least, a lot of that does tend to fluctuate in quality. Because for me, I'd rather have quality over quantity. And
same.
honestly, a lot of it does get bad, especially a lot of the stuff in the early 2000s. I swear to God, those fucking lyrics. Like, so. This one's difficult for me because it's like there are some really good qualities, especially like in like from like the late 80s to the mid 90s. But man, the lows are really that low for me. Like, because again, their 2001 record, I don't know if like like if you've like heard that like album recently, or not 2001, 2000, The Crybaby.
No, I haven't. What's up with that
There's
one?
some
Has it?
like low
Has
key
it?
offensive like lyrics in that album. Like,
Yeah, it has a lot of it aged just really poorly in
yes,
retrospect.
and let's just
How
say there's a
so?
lot of how do I say this? Um anti-neurodivergent content in it.
Oh, just like a bunch of ableistic stuff.
Yes.
Does he use like actual like ableistic slurs, or is it just like general stereotypes and whatnot?
Like okay, well, okay, okay, it's kind of both because one of the songs was like um basically just calling out like people with ASD, and that drew me off the fucking wall. So, yeah, now I think about it, the more I think about
Oh
this, the more I'm
no,
like wanting
Steve,
to put this.
I didn't know that. I have never heard of this album before, but no, as somebody who's on the spectrum, I don't like that. I'm probably gonna bump them down to a C, just for that. No, I don't mess around with ableism, or especially anti-autistic sentiments. Mm-mm.
I'm putting them in C tier because that really pissed me off. Because like,
No, yeah, it's no amount of good music is excused by being an ableistic douchebag.
and that sucks. Because like I said,
And
they
just
have
like
some of the best albums in grunge, and then they have
they do, but
fucking.
and to just spread that kind of stigma and that kind of misinformation about like neurodivergent people when there's so much misinformation and misunderstandings about them already, it's incredibly irresponsible.
Is it my turn? Because I kind of want to move on.
It is your turn.
I want to talk about a band that like is good and they don't make shitty lyrics. Hum.
Hey, let's go. Fucking yeah. All right, go for it. You go first.
Honestly, this is a band that I just discovered just for this list. I've never heard of them before.
Same.
But honestly, I'm probably gonna put them in S tier. Cause
No,
like
dude,
to me,
I agree.
like cause like the thing is that they're more on the proggy side. As a matter of fact, they're actually very similar to like Smashing Pumpkins in a lot of ways.
That's one of the things that drew me into their music a lot in the first place after hearing them on the sample playlist. Is that it gave me a lot of like proggy, like almost Smashing Pumpkins esque type vibes, and I love that kind of music.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah, yeah. You'd prefer an astronaut and Electra 2000 are fucking banger albums. Like, oh
especially
my god.
Electra 2000. Like, oh my god, dude, such a good album. But this
Like,
band is definitely. I agree that they go firmly in A tier. Definitely a hidden gem, in my opinion.
yeah, like, and it's weird because apparently this is one of the bands that directly inspired Deftones.
Like,
So,
oh,
like,
well,
I
good
did the
on them.
research, and apparently, like, Chino Moreno was a huge, like, Hum fan. So,
There you go.
well, now we know why this is amazing. So,
Yeah, the more you
and
know.
yeah, and they just released an album a couple years ago, and actually it was surprisingly pretty good for an album from like 2 years ago, where everyone else was doing really bad. So, so yeah, no, check them
Yeah,
out. Like, yes, they're like lesser known, and they're from like Illinois, but they definitely have, ironically, that Seattle mixed with Smashing Pumpkins
yeah, it's good
taste to them.
stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Hidden gem right there.
It's very
So,
nice.
and you know what? Now that I think about it, just going off of hidden gem bands, um, granted, I don't know how you feel about them, but Kius. So this is
What's that?
the
Hold
band
on.
Kius. Oh,
Oh, okay. No, no, sorry. Your audio glitched out for like half a second, but it's fine now. It's on my
okay.
end.
But yeah, did you hear the name of the band?
Yeah.
So this is actually the lead singers of Fu Manchu, which is on this list. We'll get to them later, as well as Queens of the Stone Age's first band. So, and I would put them in. Actually, I'd put them in high A. They're one of those bands that, does make a bit of slower music at times, but to me, it feels way more interesting in a way. Like, it doesn't feel boring to me. Like,
Yeah.
I,
No, see, I like the slower music. That's one of the reasons why I like Electric Wizard and like I Hate God and bands like that so much. Is I like stuff like that where it's like more melodic. It's kind of plodding, but it's heavy. It's melodic. It's got a nice tempo. Something you can
mhm.
bang your head to, kinda.
But they, unlike those types of bands, they actually do go more into like a more typical grunge sound. Like, probably, yeah, and probably even more noticeably in this, like especially their 1994 album, which, god, that album's so damn good. Sorry, I can't think of the name of the album off the top of my head. The one with Space Cadet on it. Yeah, Welcome to Sky Valley. Go listen
Yeah,
to it.
that's a
It's pretty good. And as someone who who was born in California, I approve because they're a California band. So,
yeah. I also put them in A. I put them just under Fu Manchu, actually, because I'm also a big fan of them. But no, yeah, Cuse firmly in A tier.
all right, I've got one more, right? Yes, I do.
You got one
Um,
more, buddy.
want to talk about another band that's not very good?
Yeah, go for it.
Lemonheads.
Ew. 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 F. F. Ew. Oh, I'm gonna throw up. I'm gonna throw up my Cheez-Its, dude. No,
You
it's
want to
just
describe why this band sucks?
yeah. It's your turn, so I'll let you explain. But oh my god, just
Yeah,
my
they're
head.
they're going in F. Literally a one-hit wonder, and similar to Oasis, a one-hit wonder, and that one hit is literally the worst thing in the world. Oh wait, actually, technically they were a two-hit wonder, but like Into Your Arms sucks so bad. Like, because it just sounds like shitty Nirvana.
Oh,
Like, it really
that's
does.
basically what they are. They're just dollar store Nirvana.
And here's the thing, they didn't even come after the fact. They were around the same time as Nirvana. So, like, they
Yeah,
were
they came
clearly
around like
cashing
it
in.
was like about a year afterwards, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't
Yes,
it?
1992.
Yeah.
Yeah, 92 and 93. Like, so they were clearly trying to cash in on the grunge scene
No, they
right when
absolutely
it was
were.
happening. So,
Yeah, they were one of the people who were smart enough to invest in the market early, but it ended up biting them in the ass.
yeah, because they sucked so bad. So,
Yep.
so yeah, don't listen to Lemonhead. They are not
Don't
worth your time.
don't ever
Like,
listen to Lemon.
even though yes, but they just had its 30th anniversary. No, 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 don't. They're bad.
Okay. Bad.
It doesn't matter if they had a freaking anniversary release. Bad. But they
Yeah.
technically are older than Nirvana.
Bad. Get the spray can. Alright, is it my turn?
Yes, it's your turn.
Alright, so for my first band, let's talk about Everclear. So I think Everclear, they're pretty much on the kind of on the same level as L7 and Live for me. Their music is serviceable, but I think it's fairly average and uninteresting. I like there are like 2 or 3 songs from them that I think are really good. Like I like Everything to Everyone. I like Father of Mine. Father of Mine, I'd say, is probably my favorite song of theirs. Um, but no, their music it's fairly generic for what this genre is. There are a lot of bands that do the same thing that they do, but much better, in my opinion. And so I put them in C, just above L7.
Yeah, this one's difficult for me because it's like. Actually, never mind. It's not really all that difficult. I think I'm gonna put them in C tier as well. Because, like, they're another band that kind of goes more into the country side of things, as well as, like, the more pop sort of thing. Like, their song, Santa Monica, like, is literally basically just a country grunge hybrid song. Let's just be real here. And to be fair, that's not even their best song. As a matter of fact, I think it's one of their weaker songs, or at least in their early period. Sparkle and Fade has some better songs, and So Much for the Afterglow was fine. But by the time that they went on to their songs for an American movie albums, that's where you can skip them. So
Yeah, Songs for an American Movie was rough, man.
and they were kind of since
Little bit off. All right, band numero dos. Let's get another one of my. Actually, no, not yet. Hold on. Sorry, I'm doing a thing in my brain.
He's doing the thing, or
So
you're doing the
okay,
thing.
let's talk about a band that outside of this genre I think is really good, but their content that considers them the stuff that they put out that makes them a part of this list I don't like very much, and for that reason I scored them lower. And that's Radiohead.
Oh, yeah, Radiohead. So
Um
this is
so
one I might have to explain again, but you can talk about it first.
no, you can go first. Go for it.
Okay, so for those who don't know, Radiohead is, well, they're a band, and they did start off as grunge, and they had 2 full-on grunge albums, Pablo Honey and The Bends. However, the reason why they do count overall is because they still kept those tendencies even all the way up until In Rainbows, but it was less noticeable over time. Like, starting with OK Computer, they definitely moved away from, like, that scene. They didn't fully go away from it, though, I would say, because they still have, like, certain songs, like, hold on, like, that one single off of In Rainbows. Hold on, let me look it up, because I can't remember the exact
I like In
name.
Rainbows. In Rainbows is one of their better albums, I'd say.
Jigsaw falling into place, stuff
Yeah.
like that. I would consider to be at least like grunge adjacent by that point. So because of that, they do count, even if though they don't have full lengths, they have enough material to count. So
Yeah, I put them in D. Just because, no, yeah, Pablo Honey and the Bends, especially, I both think are kind of bad. Especially
You hate the
Pablo Honey.
Bends?
I don't hate the Bends, but overall, just it's sort of like with Apple from Mother Love Bone, where overall I think it's
That,
just kind
that
of mediocre.
that's my
But no,
favorite
Pablo
Radiohead
Honey,
album. OK Computer is objectively like the better album, but I like just the more raw sound of the Bends overall. Anyways, whatever. I'm putting
anyways, so yeah,
Radiohead now in A tier, just simply off the fact that like I actually preferred their older stuff, basically from like Kid A back. Though In Rainbows was fine. Still not overall a big fan of their music overall, but I do respect them. And I don't care what anyone fucking says, I actually like the Bends. Generally speaking, though, like, yes, is Pablo Honey the, like, objectively their best album? No, it's not. As a matter of fact, you can consider it to be one of their weaker albums. However, you are talking to someone who does not like it whenever a band goes extremely experimental all the time. Hell, you're talking to someone who put freaking Death Grips at D tier in our first tier list. So,
true.
obviously, I'm one of those people who just doesn't really care about that, because to me, if someone, I don't know, I guess just sort of my thing is that, like, I prefer more of a raw sound, but not too raw that it just sounds like shitty production. At least with the Bends, it sounds like it had some pretty good production values behind it. Even if it's not their best album, it's my favorite, and there's a difference. So,
Okay, all right, that's fair. Band number 3. Let's talk about Corrosion of Conformity. And Corrosion of Conformity is another one of those bands that leads into the more kind of hardcore, metal style of grunge. Which, as we discussed earlier with Paw, I am actually quite the fan of. In fact, I would say that they're definitely one of at least probably top 3 favorite bands in that specific style of grunge. And so in I put them in like high B, the highest level of B, just because admittedly I think some of their later stuff isn't perfect. But overall, I think they're a really good band. So high B.
I think I'm gonna put them in the lower B. Um, Actually, it's kind of the opposite. I think I like their later stuff more than their early stuff. So again, it's a lot more
Understandable.
faster paced with their later stuff compared to
Yeah,
their early stuff. So
makes sense. All right, and then
that's
for
all I
my
got to say
final
about them.
band,
So
yeah. So for my final band, let's talk about Blind Melon. So Blind Melon is
ooh,
so admittedly, uh, I Blind Melon, they're kind of a guilty pleasure band for me. They are definitely a one-hit wonder band. They're the
actually
most
two
known
hit
for their
wonder. Actually, three hit
two.
wonder.
Most people know them for their song "No Rain" off of their self-titled album. But no, like Dave said, they do have 2 other hits as well. But personally, I think they're fine. I actually like their self-titled album quite a bit. Like I like Dear Old Dad. I like Soak the Sin. I love No Rain, and so I put them in A tier.
I guess my one thing that just is kind of annoying about this band is the vocalist, because he has like a very nasally like vocal style.
Yeah,
Though to
it
be
is
fair, a
kind of
lot of it is
easily. And
synthesized.
to be fair, some of their music it does tend to lean a little bit more towards that southern rock kind of country style of grunge, which I know you said you
And
weren't really into
psychedelic.
as well.
So
Yeah, but I personally dig it on this album, especially like I said, they're self-titled. But no, for me, they're going in A.
uh I feel like a lot of people don't care about them after they're self-titled though. Cause like does anyone talk about their album Soup?
I mean, no, I'm
Or
just going off
like
of personal opinion.
or like they had a 2008 like album. Hold on, what was it called?
I think it's called like All My Friends or something like that. Hold on.
Okay, but for whatever reason it's not on Spotify. It's
Damn it.
probably
I know what it is. I know what it is, but no, it's not All My Friends. It's For My Friends.
Also, didn't the lead, one of the guys pass away again? This is another band I feel like where
Yes.
that was the case.
Yes.
Who was it?
I believe it was the guitarist, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but it was the guitarist or the vocalist. It was just so that's my final band.
Yeah.
While Dave
Well,
lists off his,
I
while
didn't give
Dave,
my opinion yet.
I'm saying while Dave gives his opinion and while he lists off his four bands, I'm going to step away to use the restroom. So
All
I
right.
will return. I will return, Sly
All
Army.
right. Ah, this is another band where I'm like super mixed on because they have some really good elements to them. I think that their combination of like a more 60s psychedelic style can work, but man, those the vocals, man, it's cause he has like a very nasally like I don't know. And especially off of like a lot of their single stuff, it just doesn't really sound good. Like, I will admit, Tones of Home instrumentally slaps because it goes more into like a traditional grunge sound. But No Rain, I don't know. It just sounds like some experimental early '90s style of song. So, but what are you doing back there? My god. So, I think I'm gonna put them in the same categorization as Sonic Youth, where I'm gonna put them in like a low B, high C. I don't know. That's just kind of how I feel. All right. Let's talk about some other bands. Surprisingly, it's been pretty split this time around. So let's change that. Candlebox. Ew. Yeah. Low key. Candlebox is like one of those bands that like similar to Lemonhead and Collective Soul. They just felt like it was kind of now. Granted, this is not a terrible band, but I'm still putting them in D tier because, like, God, like they just sound. It just sounds pretentious sounding. Like I don't know. It just seems like a lot of the music that Candlebox made is more on the side of like imitation rather than doing their own thing, if that makes sense. Like I don't know, it just sounds like this is kind of when a lot of the Eddie Vedder imitators started to come up. Like Candlebox was kind of one of the first bands that was accused of being an Eddie Vedder Pearl Jam ripoff band, and I do tend to agree with that criticism. That being said, I don't agree with people calling them a post grunge band, as verbatim, because they are a grunge band. They're literally straight from Seattle, from the scene. So as a result, they do count. Just even like regardless of just how you feel about them, anyways. But I don't know, man. This is one of those bands that just feels fake. Like, yeah, a fake grunge band from Seattle. I know that might sound, hyperbolic, but it just feels like they were just cashing in on a market at the time. So that's kind of how I feel. How does wait, are they done? No, they're
Here,
not.
still here.
All right, I'll do another band before your timeout is over. It's actually the first time I'm taking this a little bit seriously, but whatever, it's fine. Um, but yeah, no, Candlebox is just whatever. Now, as for um my second band, let's go with Blood Circus. Yeah, you can barely see the thing. Honestly, their label was kind of dumb. Like, as in, like, me actually getting their thing. Ah. Actually, let me look this up again. They technically they had albums released back in the 90s, but for whatever reason those albums aren't on Spotify. You actually like they have like a compilation album for whatever reason instead. So, yeah, it's this. Yeah, I think I'm going to put them in C tier. They are just kind of one of those average grunge bands for the time. And they just kind of blended with the scene as a result. So, but that's kind of how I personally feel about them. I don't know how Kai feels, but generally speaking, they're whatever. Though they might turn into a case similar to Element 80 in our last music tier list, where they're kind of but as a result, they might go down. But again, we'll just have to see what they have to say about it. Although, are they back? They're in the background. Okay. Oh, they're washing hands. Okay, cool. All right. My third band that will get out of the way. And this is going to be another F tier band. Stroke 9. Yes, these guys do count. They had an album in 1993 and they're really bad. F. Like just straight up F. Like their most popular song. Oh my god, hold on. What was it called again? Like yeah, little black backpack. God, it's so bad. It made me just not fun. It was not fun to listen to. It was so just of its time, but like not even a good way, like Third Eye Blind. It just was so when listening to it, because it just sounds like it's like a fake sad song. That's basically how I would describe it. It's just fake sadness. And it's just like it makes me physically cringe. Like it's basically the textbook definition of like those many post grunge bands that people talk about from like the throughout the rest of the 90s and throughout the 2000s, where it just feels so forced. And that's pretty much the entirety of that entire album, Nasty Little Things, which that's just a gross album name by the way. Like, no. And just the rest of their stuff is exactly that. And this is again one of those bands that really a lot of people would consider post grunge, but because of that cutoff date, they technically count. So yeah, they're bad. They're really, really bad.
Candlebox and Stroke. Candlebox is bad. I put them in D. I put Blood Circus in C. They're average. I put Stroke 9 in F. No, I had fucking 9 strokes trying to listen to all of their music. No, they're really bad.
Are you gonna go into more detail?
No.
I went into detail on how Stroke 9 is literally one of the cringiest bands ever. Like, you got to do it too.
No, because I mean, like, I don't really have much to say. I feel like you summoned up my opinions pretty well, and so I don't really have much to add.
Well, you better have something to add because you got to choose 4 bands. Wait, no.
I
got
know.
one more. That's right. I've got one
Okay. I thought you were trying, but never mind. Go ahead.
more. How do you feel about Counting Crows?
I actually really like Counting Crows.
Based.
They're also among my favorite bands on this list. I would have put them in S tier were it not the fact that there's one album of theirs that they put out that I didn't like very much. What was it? I'm trying to figure it out. Hold on. While I look up their discography, you talk about your opinions on them.
Yeah. I'm gonna put them in A tier. Granted, they are more on the country side of things of when it comes to like that sort of sound, but they do it so much better than like all the other bands that went country grunge hybrid. And honestly, the lead singer does seem like he's actually kind of chill, so that's kudos right there. But just more in general, August and everything after really solid. Oh, even their 2002 Hard Candy, that was actually surprisingly a sleeper hit album in my opinion. So
Oh, yeah, Hard Candy was pretty good. It was Underwater Sunshine. I don't think or Underwater Sunshine or What We Did on Our Summer Vacation.
yeah, that's one of
Again,
their
okay,
newer albums.
I don't necessarily think it's a bad album, but I do think it's their weakest album, and it did kind of bring their score down just a little bit for me. But again, very, very high A tier. Good band. Really good band.
Yeah, round here. So yeah, he does try to do a bit of an Eddie Vedder voice, but he does it a little bit better. So,
He does it in a tolerable way, in my opinion.
but yeah, no, I think they're pretty good. Just only because of that cutoff by like after their hiatus, it does get a bit mixed, but they're still solid.
Hmm.
And they're also from San Francisco.
Hell yeah. All right, so now it's my turn. Let's see. Who should we talk about first? Let's talk about Babes in Toyland. So some of you might remember Babes in Toyland from I think it was our new metal tier list.
No,
That they
no,
showed up.
no, you're thinking of a movie we talked about that was called Babes in Toyland.
I could have sworn we've talked about the band before.
No, we didn't.
Oh well,
We talked
either
about a
way,
movie on our Christmas tier list that was called Babes in Toyland.
either way, they're all right. I put them in like a low B between Collective Soul and Bush. They're not. They're a little bit overrated in my opinion, but for who they are, they're not terrible. Their first three albums are really good, I would say. But other than that, just, yeah.
I personally didn't
Oh,
really care all that much. Like, I don't know, it just seemed like it was too much on the hardcore side of things that I just didn't really care for it that much. And the vocalists kind of sounded shitty, especially on their first album. So,
yeah.
because of
All
that,
right,
I'm going to put them in D.
understandable. All right, band number two, the Bare Naked Ladies. This was another kind of hidden gem band for me. I did know about them already when we started this tier list, but they were one of the bands that I was the most excited to talk about because I discovered them completely on accident when I was younger, because of One Little Slip, the song that they made for Chicken Little. Um, and I'm honestly glad that I decided to dig deeper into their discography because they've got a lot of solid bangers on there, especially like what was the one that you put? The one that you put in the
The
sample
old
tier list.
apartment.
Yes, The Old Apartment. I fucking love that song. But no, really, really good band. A tier.
Honestly, I think I would also put these guys in S tier. I mean, people don't realize this, but they actually technically do count as grunge. I mentioned this whenever we talked about them in our earliest, bands tier list, because a lot of people mostly know them as being a pop rock band, but they weren't always like that. And as a matter of fact, a lot of their songs in their deep cuts, basically from their album American Girlfriend up until Maroon, has a lot of grunge tendencies. Um, and as a result, they actually count, and they're a pretty solid band. Just
Yeah.
especially like a lot of their deep cuts, like they are a band that people are sleeping on in America because they're actually huge in Canada, but for whatever reason they just never got a foothold in America in terms of like being popular. But if you are an American and you don't know them, go listen to their music because they're pretty good. Even though, unfortunately, their first lead singer is no longer with the band, and they still make good music. It's just there's definitely a tone shift after like the 2000s. So, but
Yeah,
solid. I approve.
indeed. All right.
Rip bam.
So third band, Screaming Trees.
Screaming
So,
Trees. Oh! Uh, rest in peace, lead singer of this band, because they just
the lead
passed away
singer of
this
the
past January.
I was gonna say he was another one of the people that we lost very recently. But no, Screaming Trees, S tier.
Yes,
They are
S tier.
not only are they so much better than Mother Love Bone in my opinion, but they're another one of the bands that's kind of considered to be the forefathers of the genre.
Mm.
Um, Especially there was what was that? What was that? I'm thinking of a very specific album. Hold on, it was their 1996 album, Clairvoyance. That was their or 1986 rather. That was the one that kind of threw them into the fray. But no, Buzz Factory I think is really good. Uncle Anesthesia, that one's my personal favorite from them. If you haven't listened to Uncle Anesthesia, do so. It's a perfect album, one of the best albums to kick off the 90s, I would say. Um, but no, they're going in S tier.
Yeah, they're going in S tier as well. Actually, funny enough, I got this just a month ago.
Yo, let's go.
Yeah, because if you guys remember, I have a CD collection, and yeah, I found this in like a thrift store here recently, and I was like, yeah, I'm taking this. So even though I'm trying to save up, I made that an exception. And yeah, no, this album's pretty good. So
Sometimes you just gotta splurge.
yeah, and yeah, Sweet Oblivion, which is this album, solid. It's amazing, and it sucks that like before 2022, not a lot of people talked about them because like they are a band that honestly just out of respect of the original lead singer that you just listen to this album and even a lot of other stuff from like the late 80s and like the late 80s where they just really just took that sort of punky style grunge and even a little bit of country as well, at least a little bit, and just tried to make it their own. Like they, in my opinion, are one of those bands that just kind of transcend the genre, and not a lot of people talk about them for whatever reason, which is sad. So yeah, no, they're pretty good. Rest in peace, the lead singer, though.
Yeah, rest in peace. All right, so band number 3.
I think this
No,
is
that was
4.
band number 3. Band number 4. That's right. Uh, Temple of the Dog. So,
You
for those
are
of you who don't
really
know,
picking a lot of these awesome ones.
this was technically Eddie Vedder's first band that he was in before Pearl Jam. It was him, and I think Chris Cornell was a part of it as well.
Yes, Chris Cornell was a part of it.
Yes, and so no, they're also. I would put them just a little bit under Screaming Trees, but no, they're definitely very very high up there for me in S tier. Hey, dude, let's go bass, Dave.
Yeah,
With the collection.
of course. That's the thing. Like,
Dave the Collector.
well, this was actually my uncle's, because he actually got it whenever they were huge, and he passed it down to me. And honestly, this is another band that's going in S tier. You are really knocking out all of the S tiers for me. Like, that is. Thanks for making that up for calling me cringe. So.
You're welcome.
But I will forgive you, at least for now. But in all seriousness, though, like, dude, it sucks that this is the only album they have, because this is a band. This is actually technically a super group of members of both Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, where it was all the members of Pearl Jam, and then Chris Cornell of Soundgarden, and one of the other guys from Soundgarden. I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but this was like their sort of startup project. What?
I said I think it was the drummer.
Oh no. Whatever. Point being is that like this is an album. This is another album. They're self-titled from 1991. That really defined what grunge would become later down that year, actually, and throughout the rest of the grunge era. And like even some of the most amazing just ballad songs, like "Say Hello to Heaven," "Pushing Forward Back," "Times of Trouble," and "From Wild World," and even the just the chemistry between both Eddie Vedder and Chris Cornell in some of these tracks works so well.
Like, dude, even as somebody who admittedly thinks that Pearl Jam is a little bit overrated, which we'll get into later, I love the synergy that Chris Cornell and Eddie Vedder have together on this album. It's good stuff.
Like, God, it's... And here's the thing, like, Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, like, this is a bit of a slight spoiler. We'll talk about that near the end of the list, but those are two of my favorite bands of all time. And the fact that they worked on this project together just... It basically brings like some of the best of the both of their worlds together to make for a really good album. And I highly recommend, if you're able to, go listen to it on Spotify, especially since they released a 25th anniversary like several years ago, and it was pretty good. So highly recommend.
Same.
So
all right, that was my fourth band. It is your turn, my friend.
All right. Do you want to talk about another band that sucks?
Let's get it out of the way.
We might have some slight we might disagree with me. You might disagree with me on this one, only just because this is like a really well-known song. But how do you feel about the general sound of Four Non-Blondes?
I'm not really a fan.
So we have to address the elephant in the room. Do you guys remember back in like 2010, 2011, the meme, the He-Man meme where it was like, hey, 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 hey.
Yeah, with the intro.
Yeah, that's where this song comes. That's where that song comes from. They were the ones who originally made the song.
Yeah, so. And I mean, the song itself is not bad, but no, I don't know. I'm not really a big fan of... I don't know. I can respect them as artists and the role that they had to play in the music industry, but just... again, that specific type of music just isn't my thing at all. And, like, I hate being so harsh with them, but I would honestly have to put them in D.
Oh, I'm putting them in F. I'm going to be more harsher than you. Because, like, here's the thing. That entire album that they made is just so boring and just bland. And whenever their biggest song actually blows up, more people know about it for a stupid meme cover than the actual people who made the song themselves. Like, I think that's an even bigger fail on their part as a result. So, and yeah, like, as a result, like, they're... Like, do you agree with me, though? Like, the fact that, like, a meme version of their song is more well known than the original song.
I mean, like, that's maybe an epic. Maybe that has to do more with the age gap, but no, I would say that is a kind of an epic fail on the songwriter's part.
Like that. I just find that so hilarious, but just for all the wrong reasons. I don't want to sound like an asshole, but
it is. It's deliciously ironic.
Like, but like, man, like, granted that meme obviously is dead, but like the fact that like, I'm sorry, that's just so funny to me because like I have a feeling that if you ask anyone who knows like that song, like they like if they know where that song comes from, they probably wouldn't know.
If you asked them about any of the deep cuts from Four Non-Blondes, they probably wouldn't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Exactly. And that's my point. And guess what? They paid the price for it. They made a song that was popular for like a weekend, and then completely forgotten about for 15, 20 years. And then later on, someone found it, made an
Yeah,
ironic
a
meme
bunch of
with
people started talking
He-Man.
about He-Man again and made the intro into a meme, and because of that, the song, people were like, "Oh, where'd the song come from?" And so, yeah.
Like, I don't know. Once your song becomes like a meme to like mock people, that's my point. Is that's when you fuck
Yeah,
up.
that's pretty much the final nail in the coffin for you.
So bland, forgettable, and kind of meh band. But because of that, that's why they're going in F.
Yeah,
So,
that's fair.
speaking of female-led singers, let's talk about Hole with Courtney Love.
Alrighty.
So obviously this was Kurt Cobain's
Lover.
lover, and then now widow. This was her group, and they were all right. I think I would put them in a B tier. Like, they made solid enough songs.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't think they're a perfect band, but yeah, again, just for what they are, their music is perfectly okay.
So, and
It's like fast food music for me, kind of, where like there's really not anything of like substance, but it's good, like fun stuff to listen to. It's
yeah,
good fun.
yeah, the thing is that like they are slightly more like radio rocky, like compared to a lot of these other bands. That's not necessarily a bad thing, just as long as you make it work. And for what they were able to accomplish, I mean, it could have been a lot worse. So that's all I've got to really say about them, though, because like not a lot of people really talk about them anymore.
Yeah,
So
Sam.
they are what they are.
You got one more band, I think.
I think I've got two. Yeah, I've got two more.
There you go.
Another band that like, okay, this is another band we actually talked about, but I haven't talked about this band with you before. I talked about it with Austin. There's a band called Sunny Day Real Estate, which this was one of the bands that was actually on our emo tier list, making this the only band on the list that crossed, emo music with grunge music. And oddly enough, I don't know if you know this, but the bassist and the drummer of this band went on to be a part of the Foo Fighters.
Hey, I actually didn't know that, but that's sick.
Yeah, I didn't know that last year either. That just completely flew away from my mind somehow.
Yeah, dude, that's rad.
And so indirectly, this band inspired not only the Midwest emo scene, but also pretty much produced, arguably the best post-grunge band, which we'll talk about that next week. So in that aspect, I actually do respect them a little bit more than I did, last year. I'm going to put them in a B tier, like actually a pretty mid to high B, because I have also grown on a lot of their tracks. I at first was kind of iffy about them, but now that I know the history and now that I know of their music a little bit more, I respect them a little bit more, especially since they influence both scenes. So.
Oh yeah. Honestly, I put them in A, just because honestly, I love their fusion of emo and grunge music. It's two genres that I think honestly kind of really they needed to get married from the start, and I think that it does it really well. It's a solid album. I'd put them in A tier personally.
Yeah, and the album that we're talking about is their 1994 record, which is escaping my mind right now. Diary, that's right. Go check it out if you're interested, and if you're interested in that, fusion of like, especially since, like I said, they basically are responsible for not only like the Foo Fighters, or one of the reasons for that why Foo Fighters exist, but also the fact that they indirectly started a full second wave of emo music, which is just
which is crazy. Yeah.
And they did it underneath everyone's noses too. Who would have
Mm-hmm.
thought? So, yeah. All right, one more band. We'll do one more band that I'm a little bit more positive about. Though I don't know how you feel about them. Our Lady Peace.
I really like them. I'll let you talk first, just because it's your turn. But I like them quite a bit. Yes.
Yeah, so they're another like Canadian style of grunge band. Some people call them post grunge, but that's only because their debut came out in 90, like it debuted in America in 95, though it really debuted in 94, but in Canada, so therefore it qualifies for the list. And yeah, no, honestly, their first 4 albums up until Gravity, A tier, easily. Like, that
I,
was a solid era for them. And I do say era because unfortunately they have a cutoff, and though, to be fair, I'm not one of those people who hates everything that they did in the 2000s, though everything from 2014 onwards, not so much, but their early stuff for sure, especially their album Naveed, and their third album, which is also escaping my mind because you have to remember, like, literally, I did too much research on this shit. Happiness is not a fish that you can catch. Solid albums. Check them out.
Absolutely. All right. Is it my turn again?
You didn't talk about Our Lady Peace.
I did, though. I agreed with you. I put them in A tier.
You have to be specific, though. It's the whole point of what I brought you here.
Oh, Happiness is a Fish That You Can't Catch, I would say is definitely their best album. That was the album that actually got me hooked on their music when I was doing research for this list. I put them specifically. I put them just under. They're just under I Hate God, which is at the top of A tier. So they're in between I Hate God and Counting Crows.
Cool.
All right. Let's see. Golly. Let's talk about another one of my F tiers. The Goo Goo Dolls.
We might have some slight disagreements here. Actually,
they're another one-hit wonder band. I put them above Oasis. They're at the top of S tier just because they're one of the only bands whose song that they're most known for is actually really good in my opinion, and that obviously is Iris. Not S tier, F.
I thought I heard S tier.
Yeah, you just hush you. But no, I put them at the top of F just because I think Iris is a really good song. But no, yeah, they're a one-hit wonder band. All of their other music is mediocre at best.
They are technically actually not a one-hit wonder. You would be shocked. Because
really?
do you not remember Slide or Sympathy?
No.
Okay, to be fair, this might be because this is a guilty pleasure band for me, but like they are not that bad. As a matter of fact, here's the thing. They count as grunge because they actually started in the 80s. I don't know if you know this.
That is true.
Because they started, but like, really, F tier? Really? There's worse bands than them. I think a lot of people have grown on this group. And honestly, like they are more than just Iris. I would say that Superstar Car Wash and Gutterfish were actually surprisingly decent albums for what they were. And Dizzy Up the Girl, surprising. There's some surprising hits on there. Like seriously, Bulletproof and All Eyes on Me. Like, I know there's a subset of people who hate this band, and to those people, I understand why. It's actually very similar to why people don't really like, a band like Hoobastank. But they're not F tier. They're not. As a matter of fact, like, this might be a huge disagreement, but I'm gonna put them in like high B. almost like a low A. They are not that bad. They are, like, if you listen to their deep cuts, they are actually a genuinely good band for what they were trying to do. People only hate them because they were kind of like the Nickelback of the late 90s. Though to be fair, Nickelback is not as good as the Goo Goo Dolls in my opinion. To those people, I understand why. It's actually very similar to why people don't really like, a band like Hoobastank. But they're not F tier. They're not. As a matter of fact, like, this might be a huge disagreement, but I'm gonna put them in like high B, almost like a low A. They are not that bad. They are, like, if you listen to their deep cuts, they are actually a genuinely good band for what they were trying to do. People only hate them because they were kind of like the Nickelback of the late 90s. Though to be fair, Nickelback is not as good as the Goo Goo Dolls in my opinion. So, like, sorry, I got a message on Discord. Anyways, wait, was that my pick? I don't remember. Okay, whatever, it's fine. Let's get honestly, I kind of want to get some of these lower tier bands out of the way because, like, some of these are just ugh. So, yeah, the Nixons. Honestly, I would probably put these guys in F tier. Because, like, God, this just sounded so... Hold on, let me remind myself. Because I hated the... Oh, that's right. This is another Pearl Jam sounding band. And, yeah, this vocalist is just trying too hard. And I couldn't stand that. Not to mention, the lyrics themselves just felt so... I don't know. It just felt so, like, iffy, if that makes sense. And it just didn't feel good to listen to, if that makes sense. But
yeah, sorry about that. Like I said, I was getting an important phone call from a family member. Which band are we talking about?
the Nixons.
The Nixons? No, yeah, they're another one of those bands where, again, I wanted to like them, but I just couldn't. I put them in C.
I put them in F.
Just
what were you gonna say?
nothing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Yeah, you're good. All right. So I think I still had two bands left.
No, actually, you could choose 4. Because I think I did the previous ones, so you can choose 4.
Okay. Okay. All right. So band number 1. Hold on. I just realized I haven't done that yet. God. Let's talk about Seaweed. Seaweed. For me, I can't really decide whether I want to put them in like a low B or like a mid C, just because, like, I don't know, that a lot of their albums, it's like it's very hit or miss. It's sort of like what you were saying earlier with, I think it was the Melvins, where the highs are really good, but the lows, I feel, are also pretty low as well. And just I don't know. I think I'm gonna put them in a like a high C, just above Babes in Toyland and another band that we'll talk about at the end.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna put them in C tier as well because they're more on, like, the actually more punk side than they are grunge, though they have enough songs that count as grunge. And in that aspect, I didn't really care for them as a result. Yes, I know Green Day is one of my favorite bands of all time, but again, they're one of those bands that, slowed down the punk ethos to a more acceptable level, whereas with this band, it just keeps that punk ethos, and I just don't care for it as a result.
Yeah,
So,
understandable. All right, next, band number 2. Let's talk about Fu Manchu. So I put Fu Manchu, for me, they're about on the same level as Kius.
we might have another disagreement battle here.
So I don't. A lot of people don't really like this band very much, and I can understand why. I personally, I like them a lot. Not quite as much as I like Q's. I admit Q's is definitely a better band objectively, but I put them in a low A.
Dear God,
Sorry, not low A, low B.
okay,
I
that's a
have
little bit more respectable, but
I have
like
it's low B. It's the lowest B under Bush.
these guys are like a low D, almost F tier for me. I hate the vocal style of this guy, where he's like, "Get
Really?
hard behind." It's like it just sounds like he's just drunk off his ass, and
Yeah,
like
that's fair. I understand that. I can definitely hear that just a little bit in his voice.
and it just I don't know, it just feels like they just sloppily put together the sound, and it just didn't really sound all that great. So yeah.
All right, band number 3, Meat Puppets. Um,
Mm.
See, this is another one of those bands where like I'm torn between like a mid rank or like a slightly above. But you know what? I'm gonna be kind to this band. I'm gonna put them just above, slightly above Bush in B tier. Because like I don't know, the vocals. I don't know. It's weird. I honestly can't really decide if I liked the vocals or not. It was very
I
back and
didn't.
forth.
I for sure
There are
didn't.
parts of it where I feel like it sounds really good, and there are parts of it where it's like the worst thing ever that I've ever heard on the planet. And it's a very weird tonal shift. I think all of the instrumentals are solid. I'll give it that. Um, but no, yeah, it's definitely I can see why it wouldn't be Dave's cup of tea, but I think they're okay.
Well, I don't. Well, I think that they're not okay, and I'm also gonna put them in D tier because like they're okay. Similar to Sonic Youth, they're one of those bands that technically predates like what we know of as like grunge, but they kind of just went into the grunge scene a little bit, and their grunge stuff is not very good at all. Like it just sounds like they heard Soundgarden for the first the first like 10 minutes off of Bad Motorfinger and tried to make that backline, guitar riff as the entire just discography without doing anything with it. Not to mention the
Yeah,
vocalist is just so no.
yeah. All right. Excuse me. Final band. The Afghan Wings.
Ooh. Or
The
Wigs.
sorry, the Afghan Wigs. The Afghan Wigs. My bad. Spelled Whigs.
Yep.
But honestly, this band, this was another unexpected banger for me. Another one of those bands where I didn't know anything about their music until I started doing research for this tier list, and I didn't like them quite as much as I liked Our Lady Peace. But they're definitely up there for me. I would put them in A tier.
Yeah, I'd put them in A tier as well. Um Granted, I will admit, like that's more of a low A because the vocalist he sounds like a grandpa at points,
Yeah,
where he's
just a little bit.
like he sounds like he's a bit older than he actually was at the time. Um,
Yeah,
but like in terms of instrumentals, they definitely slap, and as a result, I can give them credit where credit is due in that regard. Um, and they have some pretty solid like hits from like the 90s and even like some more recent hits that they've had like in more recent years they've surprisingly been pretty good. So as a result, I give them a solid go listen to them. So
yeah, do it. All right, it's your turn now, my friend.
all right, let's talk about an actual one hit wonder again. Better than Ezra.
Bad band.
Or maybe I'm just too sure. Or maybe
Right.
I just.
Or maybe I just no, it's bad.
Where would you put them?
I put them in F.
Do you want to elaborate?
No, just so, dude. Okay, this guy's vocals. Not even gonna lie, vocal performance that I heard on this entire fucking tier list, dude. Like, I am actually convinced that listening to this guy's voice caused some kind of hearing damage to my eardrums. I'll never properly recover. And it's just, the instrumentals are bad. They all sound like they just picked up their instruments for the first time. The vocalist sounds like shit. The mixing sounds like shit. It's all horrible. Yeah, bad album. Bad band.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna put them in like a low D, high F. Granted, I'd rather. I guess the thing is that like with Collective Soul, that was just a band that just actively pissed me off. I wasn't actively pissed off with Better Than Ezra, but like they're still just bland and boring, and they are only known for like their one song, which I don't hate, but like there's like hundreds of other songs I'd rather listen to, like.
Exactly.
And I don't know, man. They're just one of those bands that just kind of came in and went. So take that for what you will.
They came in, just went, and then there they went.
Yeah. Are you done with that type of potty humor?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, that wasn't meant to be like a fart thing. That was just like poof, like they just like poofed out of existence.
Yeah. Just bam. Honestly, who the fuck knows this band anyways? Dude, apparently they have 900,000 listeners on Spotify, so apparently someone's listening to them. I don't fucking know who, but
People who have way too much free time and probably don't get out much.
maybe. All right, next one hit wonder. The Toadies.
And I put them in they're in C, but they're the lowest C for me. They're still not great, but they're better than some of the other one-hit wonders on this list.
Yeah, they have a better one hit. Their song Possum Kingdom is better than Good by Better Than Ezra, so I'll give them that. But like, yeah, they're going in C tier. Again, there's just one of those bands that just exists. And, and for whatever reason, it took them like. Guess how long it took them to release, their second album after their debut in 1994?
12 years.
Okay, not that long, but 7 years. Like,
oh, man.
What the fuck happened? And they keep doing that, too, because it took them another 6 years between that album and their next album. And then it took them 8 years between that and then the other one. It's like, what is up with their production, schedule? Like it's one of the most bizarre I've ever seen. Like, you would think they'd release more albums than that.
It do be kind of wacky, though.
So, I don't know. Again, they're not a terrible band, but again, there's far better bands that you can listen to from that time period. So, not a bad song, though. But, eh. What does that look for? Oh, never mind. Next band. Gin Blossoms. What?
Giggle, giggle, chuckle, chuckle.
So,
You think I'm just looking forward to hearing you talk about this band?
why?
Because I'm interested to hear what your opinion of them is.
No, I want to hear your opinion about it first.
No, I want to hear yours.
Kai,
What?
you said you're going first, Kai.
All right. I'm going first. No, I honestly don't. I don't like this band, but I don't like. I don't hate them. I don't have like a seething, fiery, burning hatred where I think that they're like the worst band of all time or an assault on my ears or whatever hyperbolic phrase I'm using this week. But no, they're just very mediocre. I didn't like them very much. I put them in C, like low C, just above the Toadies.
Yeah, they're kind of like the early 90s version of like Third Eye Blind in a lot of ways. Um, being more on the pop side of that, genre, and like really only having a couple of hits. Though, to be fair, I mean, I actually did like their album New Miserable Experience. I thought that was a fine album. And so, as a result, I am going to put them in like also like a high C, low B, just because they at least did something a bit more interesting. So, though, to be fair, they're more on the pop rock side of things than grunge, though through verbatim they count.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm. And then the final band that I'll talk about for now is a band called Shellac, which they actually recently got away from Spotify because of the whole controversies that platform has been doing. Though obviously that's not worth covering. They're okay. I mean, they are kind of boring though. So as a result, I think I'm gonna put them in a like C again. I don't know. They're just kind of iffy, if that makes sense. Like they just don't really have good like production.
Yeah, they were another for me. They were another just kind of nothing band where it's just they exist. They're just pretty standard for what the genre has to offer. There's nothing really of note that stands out to me, but there's nothing really worthy of particular scorn either. So it's fine.
All right, fair enough. Oh, next, it's your turn.
It's my turn, yeah. So we're gonna start off with Brother Kane. So with Brother Kane, I ended up putting them in the high C tier. They're my highest C, just above seaweed. Mostly just because like overall, I think that a lot of their output is not the best, but they have two albums that I really like. Their first two, and I can see why people would like some of their other work, even if I don't personally. There's definitely songs on there that I can personally vibe with, even if I don't like some of the albums as a whole. But they didn't really do much for me, even though they're the best C tier on this list in my opinion, but they're C nonetheless.
Hold on, I'm gonna re-listen to them again because I just added them yesterday, so I'm kind of admittedly iffy about them, but I'll nonetheless, hold on, let me just make sure I'm actually looking at the Brother Kane, not Brothers Kane. Sorry,
No, you're good.
Oh yeah, it's this band. Yeah, I think I'm gonna put them C tier. I don't know. They just sound a bit more on the generic side. So, which again, if a band is on the C tier, yes, I might have more of a negative opinion about it, but it doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that they're like
it doesn't
average.
necessarily mean that they're a bad band. Yeah, C tier is like average.
Well, okay, B tier is average, or like above average, or just stuff that like I prefer. C tier is bands that like either are below average or are average, but I don't personally prefer. So that's kind of how that works.
for me, I'd say C tier are the bands that like I can find qualities about them that I like, but they aren't bands that I would really listen to regularly. But maybe there are some songs from them that I really like. And then B is like the above average stuff that I would actually consider myself to be a big fan of. And then A and S, that's like the cream of the crop, if you will.
S tier are my personal favorites, and then A tiers are like the solid. So,
Yeah.
but
Anyway.
I don't know. That's just kind of how I feel about Brother Creed, at least. Or God, I don't even know this name.
You're
Brother
all good.
Kane.
It was
That's right.
Brother Kane.
All
All
right, your
right.
turn. Next
Band
up.
number 2. Yeah, next up. Let's see. Let's talk about Fudge Tunnel. Yeah, I did not like Fudge Tunnel. I did
Me
not like them
neither.
at all. Yeah, any band that has the name Fudge Tunnel, you know they're probably gonna be bad. They're just not F tier.
Okay, I didn't hate them that much, but I am gonna put them in C tier. Um, or not C tier, D tier. I mean, again, just really just not doing all that much to stand out, and as a result, just kind of fades in like background noise.
Mm-hmm.
And also Fudge Tunnel, like that's a dumb
I
name.
Fudge. I hate that name.
Yeah, it's a dumb name. And again, you guys know how much I hate dumb names. So, like, it's a tunnel of fudge. Whoop de
Yeah,
doo.
you know what they're. You know what that's probably referencing too.
Yeah, I
Um.
know. It's gross.
Anyway, all right. Band number 3. Let's talk about a band that I have a slightly higher opinion of, and that is Skinyard. Uh, I personally put them in like a mid B between Collective Soul and Bush. I would definitely say that they're another one of they're another band where I'd say a lot of their music is really good, even if I don't necessarily consider myself to be a huge fan. But it's like if somebody else put it on, I wouldn't turn my nose up at it. You know, it's serviceable stuff. So yeah, like I said, mid B.
Um, I'd say high C for me. I mean, again, they are kind of more on the metal-y side. Are they more on punky side or like more like metal-y side, would you say?
I'd say they're more punkish.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it didn't click with me, but I just didn't really personally care all that much. So
Yeah, that's understandable. All
I
right,
don't know. It just didn't
final
was it
band,
just wasn't my thing.
final band for me for now. Failure, C tier. They're another nothing band. They
Wait, which band?
exist. Failure. They're another band. We're just like pretty indifferent to their existence one way or the other, and it's just I honestly could really care less about them, tbh, and so now I put them in C tier.
Wow, this is the exact reverse thing that we just did with Skinyard. I think I would put them in B tier, because they're a little bit more experimental, but like it's the type of experimental that I at least approve of because they go into surprisingly some more electronic sounding elements, which is very unique, I'd say, like in
It's
comparison.
unique. It is unique, I'll say, even if I personally didn't like it very much.
Um, though I will say this, I'd rather listen to a bunch of other bands. Though I give them at least A for effort, and actually having a decent album from 1994. It's the one with the frog on the cover. Um,
Right.
what is it called? Um, Magnified. That album was fine for what it was. Though I wouldn't say that their debut or their album Fantastic Planet were amazing though. So
Yeah. All right. Your turn.
it is my turn. Let's get another not very good band out of the way, and also has a really dumb name. Um, Monster Magnet.
Oh no. That's
Yeah, I think I would put these guys in F.
yeah, same. No, Monster Magnet, admittedly it's not quite as bad as Fudge Tunnel, but
It's
like that
still
that
a
sounds
dumb
like
name.
it sounds like it sounds like an alternate universe version of the Monster Mash, like some kind of weird dance that people did at parties back in the 60s and now nobody cares about it anymore.
Yeah, no, this group is like this one tries to go for a more like southern sound, and it just does not work. And it
No,
just
it really doesn't.
and it made me at least physically cringe. So
Man, this is one of the few bands again where I would say where it physically hurt me to listen to their music.
so they're cringe core then. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, they're definitely cringecore.
Yeah, they're like God, this is I feel like we should just move on. I don't want to talk about them. They honestly, do we even need to say anything else?
I
They're a
don't think so.
grunge
No.
band that tried to combine country with southern music, like southern, and it just failed on every part. And
It
they have a really
falls
dumb
flat
name.
on. Yeah,
So like that's all you need to know. Bad. And I think considering that we're almost like done with this list already, which is actually kind of surprising, I think this is starting to showcase why grunge is only well known for just a few artists.
because a lot of bands are kind of mediocre.
Yeah, there was a lot of mediocre stuff. It's kind of the same thing with the metalcore tier list. Like that's what this is reminding me of. And that's not good. So,
Yeah.
but all
All
right.
right, so we got 20 bands left. So if you want, we can both do a rapid fire round where we both list off 10 more.
Um Sure, we can do that though. Let's get the big six separated so that we can.
All right.
Yeah, because we're saving Stone Temple Pilots, Smashing Pumpkins, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden for last for obvious reasons.
Yes.
But yeah. So yeah. So actually, I did the first one, so I'll do 9, and then you can do the rest of them. Is that good?
The inside of my nose is itching like hell, and I don't know why.
Did you hear me?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So that was number 1. All right. 7-year
Yep.
bitch. D tier. Honestly, I really hated the vocals and I hated the instrumentals even more. This just did not vibe with me. And I don't know why, but their cover off their 1991 record just looked off to me. Like it just felt like it just looked extremely dated. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
agree. And just their name just rubs me the wrong way as well. 7-year bitch. Just ugh.
So,
The vibes are off.
where would you put them?
I put them in F.
Yeah, honestly. Actually, now I think about it, yeah, I'm gonna put them in F too, because like, nah, they are not it. So, all right, what's this band again? God damn it, I can. Sorry, I do apologize for some of these. Just this was another one where it was just kind of hard for me to like actually make the pictures because a lot of them kept blending in the background. Oh, Caroline's Spine. Um, I guess a C tier. They exist. They're fine. That's all I've got to say
Yeah,
about them.
I put them just above Brother Kane in C tier.
Ah, fair enough. Dinosaur Jr., another kind of lame name. And though to be fair, they had some decent songs, but I wouldn't say they have like great albums. In fact, some of their albums are actually kind of bad. Yeah, no, I think they're probably like C tier again.
I agree. I put them in very low C. They
So,
definitely are better songwriters than they are album compositioners or compile whatever.
fair. The Gits. Actually, funny enough, I actually remember talking to one of my uncle's like friends or whatever. They apparently liked the Gets a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
I can see where they're coming from because like they're more on the punky side. As a matter of fact, some people list them just as solely as a punk band more than a grunge band, though since they're associated with the scene, they're obviously on the list. And I guess in that aspect, it's kind of a cool story learning about them. So I'll give them a B tier just for that, but that's still like a low B because they're not a band I
Yeah.
go back to regularly.
I put them in A tier, just under I Hate God, because I like their music quite a bit. I love the more punky style of grunge that they bring to the table. It's good sounding to me, especially as a punk fan. I like it.
Yeah, again, I mostly just put them higher just simply because I think their story's interesting. So,
Yeah, understandable.
all right, Green River, another one of the older bands from like the 80s, I'm pretty sure.
Uh-huh.
Eh, how do you feel about them?
They're okay. Again, they're another just kind of nothing band for me.
I think I'll put them in a the same thing with the Gets. I'll probably put them in a, like a B, low B. So
I put them in like a mid C.
I don't blame you. It's honestly at this point, a lot of these like middle bands you can pretty much place wherever. It mostly just comes down to preference.
Yeah,
So all
indeed.
right, Grunge Truck. I didn't care for this band, and it's especially reflective on one of their album arts. So
Yeah, no, I didn't like this band at all. This the only album we're listening to it. I felt nothing, absolutely nothing while listening to it, and I would never recommend listening to them ever. I would never do it again. It was a very Halloween experience, but nah, I put them in F.
yeah, I think I'd put them in F too. Only just simply because like it just sounds like they tried to do an Alice in Chains and they kind of like didn't do it very well.
Yeah, I agree.
So, not to mention, granted, I know this is before everyone started to hate like, American politics, but like one of their album art has like a guy like with like American face paint and it just kind of looked awkward and honestly any like album that has like the American flag on it just makes me kind of cringe, not because I hate like the US or anything, but just because I know what it's going to be about, like even by this
Yeah,
time period. So no thanks.
yeah, no, that's gonna be a no from me, Chief.
So, um, god damn. Okay, I am so sorry I made these pictures like so bad. I have no idea why these. What?
I said it's okay.
Sorry, it's just I can barely read that. Oh, I Mother Earth. I thought they were fine. I give them a mid to low B
Yeah,
because
I
I
put them in B. Actually, I thought they were pretty neat.
yeah, because they have like a more like funky sort of like style to their sound, and it's definitely unique. I'll give them that. So I I think I slightly approve. Don't think they're amazing, but they're serviceable.
Yeah,
So all right, how many bands with that so far? Hold on, one, two,
I think
three,
you have three more.
4, 5, 6, 7. I have two more. All right. Love Battery. Hold on. You talk about them first. Let me just redo this just so that I can know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Love Battery. I'm pretty much of the same opinion with Love Battery that I was with I Mother Earth. They're not the greatest band on earth or anything, but I actually thought that they were pretty neat and better than some of the more average band on this list. And so because of that, I would put them in like a mid to low B.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Actually, same. Sorry, I just listened to some of the song, and yeah. I like the instrumentation because it's upbeat enough, and the distorted guitars actually work and aren't like annoying like toadies. So, and because of that, I think they did pretty well as a result.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, I've got one more. Like I've just been going through like the rest. All right. Oh no.
Oh God, what have you done?
Lowest of the low.
Mmm.
I'm putting these guys in D.
Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah, they tried to go for a more acoustic sort of like almost like I guess like Southwest style of like sound. I don't know, like some sort of like I don't know how to. I don't even know how you call it because it's not
I
country
honestly don't
sounding,
even know
but
how to
like
describe it. It's so weird, but no, it's not good either way.
yeah, like it sounds like them trying to combine grunge with like Spanish acoustic guitar music, and it just doesn't work. Like it's just not
Yeah,
a good mix,
it's bad.
and yeah, it's a weird mix, and I don't recommend it. So yeah, all right. Do you want to list the last groups that aren't well known? You know,
Yeah, let's do it.
and then we can
All right.
finally talk
So,
about the big six.
indeed. All right. So, I want to get to the big six as soon as we can, just because it's getting kind of close to not like bedtime for me, but around the time I start getting ready for bedtime. So, I want to kind of finish this.
Yeah, we
But
went through this really fast too, which I'm actually glad we did this time around. So
like, I'm proud of us. So, Veruca Salt, yeah, C tier. Not the best band in the world, but certainly again just kind of mid. Soul
I would
Asylum, I
hold
put
on.
them.
Let me speak. God damn it.
Oh, I thought we were gonna. Okay, go ahead.
No, because anyways,
There, go for it. Go for it. Go
Yeah,
for it.
Veruca Salt, B tier. Honestly, I actually liked their instrumentals, and their vocalist actually I felt was competent, though they're not a band I would listen to regularly. So that's how I
Yeah,
feel.
I feel that. All right. Let's see. Next up. Where are they?
You said Soul Asylum, right?
Yeah, Soul Asylum. Honestly, I also put them in C tier, but they're better than honestly a lot of the other C tier bands I have in this list. Not, I put them on just under Meat Puppets at top C tier.
I put them in like low C, almost D tier. I just couldn't stand um this vocalist, and just some of the instrumentation just felt so out of whack, and as a
Fair.
result, just nah.
Yeah. All right. The Hammerbox or Hammerbox.
We already talked about them.
Oh no, you're right. I'm sorry. I put them in C. You know, I'm dumb. Uh, hold on. What is this? M-
Let me.
Mind Funk? I think it's Mind Funk.
Yeah, it's Mind Funk.
Mind Funk. Uh, I honestly thought that this band was pretty alright. I put them just under Love Battery in B tier. Some of their stuff is just a little bit cringe, but I think the stuff that isn't cringe is good enough to keep it from being put with the rest of the C tiers. So there you go.
Yeah, I thought this was kind of cringe, so I'm gonna put this in D tier. Trust me, like again, this is what I like to call cringe core. So
All right.
anything that
Sponge.
evokes physical cringe on me is cringe core. So sorry.
Yep.
Just
Sponge. I didn't like Sponge at all. I put them in D tier.
I put them in C tier because they have their moments, but they honestly are the same feeling that I have with Bush, where they're just a band that like they have their moments, but like a lot of their stuff is just super forgettable outside of like their 1994 album. So yeah,
Fair. Tad, also C tier.
I think I put them in D tier. So I don't know, they just weren't it for me.
Yeah. Tripping Patsy?
Hold on, let me look it up. I've got the list. It's Trippin' Daisy.
And Daisy. Okay. I thought Tripping Daisy was really good actually. They were a little bit more kind of experimental, which I thought was nice. They did it much better than a lot of the other bands we talked about that kind of did a similar thing.
Yeah, they're more poppy.
Yeah, I put them in a high B.
Yeah, I'd put them in B tier as well. They have like a cool like pop grunge hybrid fusion that they're going with. And I think it works just enough.
And then School of Fish and Watchmen actually for me both went in the same position, right at mid C, because I felt pretty much the same about both of their music, and just in the sense that it was incredibly mid, just not really for me.
Same. Honestly, both bands are just actually. I feel like Watchmen for me was a D tier though. I don't know. Just I did not vibe with them at all.
Nah, that's fair. And then hold on, I can't read this.
Oh, 7 Mary 3. It's 7 Mary 3.
7 Mary 3. Yeah. I know they also go in C, but again they go in high C.
Yeah, I think just generally speaking, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're just kind of a whatever type of group, and at the end of the day, not many people talk about them. So, though for some reason they have like nearly 1 million. But yeah,
ladies and gentlemen, last but most certainly not least, it's finally time to talk about the big four, or I guess technically the big six.
Yeah, I made you guys wait 3 hours before we finally talked about the bands that everyone actually gives a shit about.
Right?
So, I made you watch all of those 3 hours. Ha ha ha.
Ha 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 ha. We got all your monetization. Okay.
We actually did, because there were multiple ads that went through.
Yup. Alright. I'll let you do the honors of starting us.
Okay, so actually, you know what? You choose the first band that we want to talk about. It can't be Pearl Jam because it can't be Pearl Jam because we're gonna have a debate on that one.
Oh, okay. In that case, let's start out with my personal favorite of the big six, the Smashing Pumpkins.
Smashing Pumpkins.
The Smashing Pumpkins. Billy Corgan is a little bit of a dumbass, especially nowadays. He's like a conspiracy nut. He's an anti-vaxxer. He was a Trumpy. I'm pretty sure he's like a big conservative. And admittedly, a lot of their later albums after the album that came after Melancholy. I can't remember what it was called. Yes, but pretty much every album after that kind of sucked balls.
But if we're talking about the grunge stuff, which was Melancholy, Siamese Wish, and Gish.
Melancholy, Siamese Dream, and Gish, yes. And especially Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness is one of my favorite albums of all time, just ever. It's almost a perfect album from front to back. It's not only is it a fantastic grunge album, it's a fantastic alternative album, it's a fantastic dream pop album. There are so many different genres that they blend together with the grunge really well, in my opinion, and they're really good. So, easy S tier for me.
Yeah,
and they're the only band on this list that I have had the pleasure of seeing in concert.
I would have seen them in concert, but unfortunately I had to leave the position that I was in. So, fun. but whatever. As
Yeah, that's
for how I feel about their stuff overall, I know I put them in a C tier in our very first tier list, but that was judging them based off of all their stuff just combined. But if we're talking about their grunge stuff, they are easily A tier. It's not even a contest, because like Siamese Dream, Melancholy. Okay, Siamese Dream and Gish are definitely like, top tier grunge albums. My only thing with Melancholy is that, like, while there's some really amazing songs on there, it does feel way too bloated at points, especially since, like, it's literally a double album. And so,
yeah, that's fair.
like, it's not a
It is.
bad album. It's actually really good in a lot of ways, but man, it does feel like there's a lot of
It
filler.
is a very. It is a very long album, I'll say.
So, and especially the deluxe edition from 2012. Ah! But regardless, though, their old stuff holds up, and as a result, I still respect their old stuff, even if he's kind of lost it after Melancholy.
Even if Billy Corgan's a kind of a shitter now.
But he's not Ozzy from Melvin's Bad, though. Let's at least admit that, because like,
Fair, fair.
but
All
yeah,
right, who's next?
Stone Temple Pilots.
Stone Temple Pilots. All right, go ahead.
I put them in B tier last time, but I've really grown on this band, and I'm honestly, I would probably put them. You know what? Fuck it. I'm putting them in S tier.
Yeah,
I I think that I've really grown on even some of their later stuff without the original lead singer, which rest in peace.
Scott Weiland. Yeah,
Yeah, Scott Weiland, rest in peace. But even like obviously their early stuff like Core and Purple are really good albums. Number 4, hell, I'm even one of those weird people who like Shangri-La Da and their 2010
really.
record. So, like,
Yeah.
honestly, the only record I didn't really care for was Tiny Box, their 96 record, only just because the album art is so bad that I refuse to listen to it. And honestly, compared to Blind Melon, they do the whole psychedelic grunge mix way better, in my opinion. So as a result, yeah, nice.
Yeah. No, I am okay. Here's my thing, right? I don't hate Stone Temple Pilots. I actually do admittedly like them quite a bit. And I love Scott Weiland as a musician. I have a great deal of respect for the impact that they had on the music industry and the role that they and Scott Weiland played in the grunge scene. But personally, I do think that they are just a tad overrated. Like,
Okay, I do
don't get
understand
me
where you're
wrong.
coming from, though.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I like Purple. Purple slaps. Oh, we were just talking about it. The album that oh fuck, their first album. You know what I'm talking
Core.
about. Yes, Core. God, I can't believe I didn't remember the name of that. Core is really good. I like that album a lot actually. But no, yeah, just I think they're just a little bit overrated overall, especially some of their later stuff without Scott Weiland. And so they I did put them in C, but they're my number 1 C. It's by a very slim margin.
Okay, that's fair. Um, okay. All right. Oh, you choose the next one, I think.
All right, for the next one, let's talk about Alice in Chains. Uh, I I really like Alice in Chains. I don't like them quite as much as I like some of the other bands in the Big Six, but not Facelift. I love Facelift, one of the greatest, not only one of the greatest grunge albums of all time, but also, in my opinion, just one of my personal favorite albums.
Best
Um,
album from
the Jar-
1990 flat, so there you go.
yes, and their Jar of Flies EP, I also think is pretty good. Um, their self-titled, I think, is just a little bit overrated, but it's also fine.
I think it's
Over
underrated.
overall, good album or good album, good band, A tier.
Yeah, I put them in A tier originally, but considering that like just the placement of all the other bands on the list, I think I'm gonna put them in S tier. Because Facelift and Dirt alone really hold them up. Like I love both of
I
those
do,
albums.
I completely forgot to mention Dirt. I fucking love Dirt. That's my favorite album of theirs.
Um, Honestly, I find I feel like their self-titled is underrated because I rarely ever hear people talk about it. Like,
I don't know. I've heard people give nothing but glowing praises for it, so I guess maybe it's just different communities.
yeah, I don't know. And even a lot of their stuff post, God, I feel bad that I can't remember their first lead singer. Rest in peace, him. Them.
Scott Weiland,
No, that was
the
Stone
original
Temple Pilots.
vocalist.
Yeah, there were
Yeah.
two vocalists for Alice in Chains.
You mean Lane Staley.
Yeah, Lane Staley. Rest in peace, him. Um, but even like
Yeah,
the co-vocalist who was with the band originally, like he was the secondary vocalist because they had two vocalists. People forget that. Um, but then it obviously just became the other guy. Even a lot of their stuff, like post their hiatus, I thought was actually surprisingly pretty good, especially their 2018 record. Like that was a
oh yeah.
sleeper album.
I
So
will say Jerry Cantrell does absolutely carry the band. He is a phenomenal
yeah,
guitarist.
Jarek. So yeah, no, I think overall still I would probably put them A tier, like in just a generalized bands tier list like we did before. But in terms of like grunge music, I would put them in S tier personally. So
Understandable.
all
All
right.
right.
Next up. Now this one is gonna be a bit awkward for me at least because I know I threw a little bit of shade at them before. Um because I put them as like the weakest out of all these, or the second weakest, because I put Smashing Pumpkins technically as the weakest in our first tier list. But in terms of just, their influence and just out of, what grunge was able to do, I would put Nirvana in A tier. So, because my thing is that, like, in my opinion, out of, like, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and Nirvana, those being the big four, in my opinion, I still think that Nirvana is kind of the weakest. But I still respect them just generally overall, especially with like In Utero and
See,
Nevermind. So,
I would argue that Pearl Jam is the weakest of the big four.
and we'll debate that one right after we talk about Nirvana. But my sort of
Yeah.
thing though is that with Nirvana, a lot of it is not just the fact that like I personally didn't really connect with Nirvana as much as I have with like the other bands, but it also just it's kind of more respect for Kurt Cobain, which we don't even need to acknowledge the rest in peace with him as well. But it's because the thing is that like he was one of those people who genuinely just did not want the fame. Like he wanted to be just make
No, yeah, he
music,
really
but then he just kind of
he had
blew up.
yeah, he had like this whole leader role just kind of thrust upon him without him wanting it. And it became just not fun for him anymore.
And so just out of like that's why I try like not to put Nirvana up in a super high position because like
They
he
do
honestly just
have
didn't really want that for like
yeah.
personally. So
Now there are a small group of conspiracy theorists who believe that Courtney Love was jealous of Kurt and that in the midst of their messy breakup she actually murdered him and framed it as a suicide. I don't think that's true personally, but
there's
yeah.
also people who fucking believe that Reverse Cuomo's of all people of Weezer is secretly him in disguise, which is fucking stupid.
Really?
Yes, that's an actual conspiracy theory and it's fucking stupid.
I've never heard that before. Wow.
Yeah, it's whack. But overall though, even though Nirvana's not my favorite, I still respect them, and I definitely would probably listen to them way more than literally all these other bands that are below them.
I also put I also put them in A just because I feel like some of their songs are just a little bit overrated, but they are is still admittedly a very good band. So yeah,
Mhm.
A tier.
All right, so you want to debate Pearl Jam? Because
Yeah. So again, here's my thing with Pearl Jam. Okay, I'm pretty much the same way with Pearl Jam that I am with Stone Temple Pilots. I like Pearl Jam. They're a good band. They're an okay band. I think Eddie Vedder is at least he's a decent vocalist. I think 10 is at least a pretty solid album, and I like Verses too. You know, you got classics like Jeremy. I love Jeremy. You know, Even Flow. I don't know. It's just my thing is again, sort of like with Stone Temple Pilots. I do feel like some of their albums, especially like after the album that came after Verses, I can't ever remember the name of it, but
Vitology.
especially after yes, especially after Vitology dropped, I feel like their quality started dropping a lot, and like people kind of let it slide because oh they're Pearl Jam, and just I don't know. Did put them in C, but it's still a high C.
That one is the one that hurts me. Because, like, the thing is that, like, they're more than just 10 and Verses. Because, in my opinion, Yield is actually also a really good album, as well as Avocado. Hell, even, like, some of their later output, like Lightning Bolt, I thought were actually surprisingly pretty good, especially for, a band that, you know, should have felt like they were like coatsing, like just kind of like phoning it in, but they didn't phone it in, and
I
that's
don't know.
well, except for No
See, with
Code
me,
and
with
Binaural. Those are the only two albums they phoned in.
with me,
So
it felt like they did kind of phone it in just a little bit though. It felt like they kind of got
only with
famous.
those two
Like
albums, though.
it just
Like
for me, it feels like they got famous off of their hits, and then just were kind of riding that cess and trying to recreate that lightning in a bottle for a long time. And as a result, ended up staying around for much longer than I think they really needed to.
needed to,
Like, but again, like I said, perfectly fine band. I still like
but
quite a bit of it.
Avocado though, and Yield. You didn't like? Did you like Do the Evolution?
I
Like
liked Do
that's
the
one of their
Evolution,
best
and
songs.
I liked Do the Evolution, and I'll admit Yield was a good album. I liked Yield.
I don't know. I don't know. I guess just like I'm sorry if it seems like I'm being like slightly iffy. It's just I just feel
No,
like
you're
people
okay.
shit on Pearl Jam all the fucking time, and it's so annoying.
No,
Like
I do definitely agree that a lot of people just kind of hate on them just because it's the popular thing to do. But
so like I'm sorry if it is seeming like I'm going like pushing on you.
no, it's okay.
It's just the
It's
thing is that Pearl Jam is
I,
like amongst one of my top 15 favorite bands of
I,
all time. So
I want
obviously they're going in S tier.
no, yeah, you're perfectly okay. I want my opinion to be challenged and for people to force me to rationalize my way of thinking. That's what
So
discussions like this are all about.
so I don't know. It's just to me it just annoys the fuck out of me because I feel like so many people have just shit on the band at least like in recent years, like more so. Like I'd say in the past 5 years or so, but it's like you're criticizing what they inspired, which is not what you should do. You should criticize the band itself. And honestly, like in terms of, like the band itself, they made amazing music. Like 10 and Verses are two of my favorite albums of all time. Like hands down, no competition. Like hell, this is a bit of a hot take, but I think 10 is the better album from 1991 compared to Nevermind. Like I think it's that damn good. So
I think that's a defensible position, even if I disagree.
so I don't know. Just in general though, Pearl Jam, I know I'm, bragging like dragging this on a little bit longer than we should, but point being is that like they are one of my favorite bands of all time and I
Yeah,
do hold them
like
up.
still a good band.
And thankfully though, another one of my favorites is Soundgarden. They are a top
Yes.
10 favorite band for me.
Yes. Oh my God, Soundgarden is so good.
So, of course, rest in peace, Chris Cornell. I actually visited his grave last year um, because I was visiting California just for personal like things. I don't want to get into it, but I found his location, and it was definitely just kind of sad because, like, God, it just sucks with what happened with him, like, especially because, like, he died during my lifetime, and that's just weird
Right?
to
Like
think about.
I think it was 2017, shortly
2017,
after. Yeah, it was shortly
shortly
after the
before.
news about before Chester Bennington. Really, I thought it
Yes,
was
it was
after.
before. No, it was before, because like it was back in like April, and then Chester
Ah,
passed away in July. I remember,
I see.
like, but 5 years ago, regardless, and it's just
Right? No, yeah, it was within our lifetime that one of the biggest icons of a generation ended up dying, and it just from by his own hand, no less. It's so sad, and
and
it
it's
goes
just
to show that mental health is a serious epidemic in this country, and anybody you know could be experiencing issues, and it's often the people who smile the brightest and laugh the hardest that
mhm.
are having the biggest struggles.
and and even just besides that though, like Soundgarden honestly has made some of the best music of all time, and it goes beyond just talking about Bad Motorfinger and Super Unknown, because
Yeah, yeah,
obviously
even
Super
with his stuff
Unknown.
like Audio Slave and sorry.
Well, I was about to say that like Super Unknown is, it's either that or 10, which is my favorite grunge albums. Like I
I would
flip
personally
flop
go with
between the
Super
two,
Unknown.
but like what?
If it were me, I'd go with Super Unknown.
I don't know. I flop between the two, but like either way though, just I consider that to be a masterpiece of an album that literally has no bad songs. Like maybe you could say half kind of is off, like off track of the album, but it's still a solid song. And hell, even a lot of their stuff from the 80s. And you guys know I don't really care about stuff from the 80s, but like their albums Louder Than Love and Ultra Mega OK, super solid out. Hell, even their 2012 album was surprisingly pretty damn good. Even if you consider that to be their weakest album, it's still a solid 7 out of 10. They have no bad albums in their discography. And as a result, I highly respect them. And
Mm.
just sucks that
They're,
they no longer exist.
yeah,
So,
it still really messes me up that he died within our generation.
yeah, just again,
Anyways,
rest in peace,
yeah,
Chris
but no, I
Cornell.
think I think it's safe to say that we both put them in S tier.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think I'm gonna add an extra tier. I don't usually do this, but just for my personal top tens, the
Understandable.
tops, the tops tier. So,
You'll dig us, baby. We're the tops.
yeah, that's everything on the list. So,
And that's another list vanquished, boys.
and
We
that's
did it.
everything on the list. Do you know where this is going?
I think I do.
Although this one might be contentious with you, though honestly at this point I have no idea whenever we're going to talk about this band ever again. So
Oh, yeah, let's go for it.
let me add it. Though I do have to explain this one, kind of like how we did with Primus last time. Though this one I think most people would, I think more people would understand than not. What's the secret band of the week?
Oh man, who's that band? What's the secret ingredient? Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited to find out. What is it?
You can refresh now.
All right, let's do it. man, really? Really? Hmm. All right. Explain.
So, you guys remember Tool, right?
Yeah. All right. I love Tool. Everybody loves Tool. If you don't love Tool, what kind of ears were you even born with? Obviously, that's a joke. But yeah, I love Tool.
Well, as long as you're not one of those pretentious assholes who's like, you don't just listen to Tool, you experience it. But yeah,
Right.
no,
Oh my
Tool.
god.
So this is kind of a weird one, but have you ever listened to a lot of their deep cuts on Undertow and on Amy and Anima? Fuck.
Inema,
Anima.
I think the way that symbol is written, the correct way to pronounce it is I. So technically, the correct way to pronounce it is Inema.
Anima. Okay.
Yeah. But even if I don't think that's how they meant for it to be pronounced, I'm just being a pretentious douchebag. But if you
But
want
like
to be as
regardless
grammatically
though,
correct,
if you listen to like a lot of their deep cuts on practically all of their albums, it really doesn't sound that indifferent from Soundgarden. Or
especially on Undertow or like their debut EP, Opiate, which not a lot of people really talk about.
yeah, and honestly, I've always associated like they're obviously a metal band, like they're a prog slash metal band, but they've had grunge tendencies, especially
Right.
off of on Inema. Now that I freaking know how to pronounce it, and Undertow and Opiate, and a lot of their like EP stuff as well. And so because of that, they make sense for them to be a part of the scene, at least like indirectly a
Honestly,
part of
no,
the
yeah.
scene.
Honestly, I think it at least makes sense. I can defend it. And honestly, if they're going on this list, I'm also putting them in S tier.
Yeah, it's not even a contest. They're going in S tier.
It's
so
Tool. Like, come on.
so, but yeah, no, like I don't know. It's just I've seen some people on like some social like on some websites such as like Reddit and like Tumblr, which I know Reddit, Tumblr, whatever. At least bring up the idea. And while like there was actually genuine debates that were going on there. Like there were some people who agreed, some people that disagreed, and it makes more sense in my opinion than what we talked about with Primus, because that one is more of a me thing. But with this one, it definitely feels more, at least a reasonable thing to talk about. So
Yeah,
but
it definitely at least makes sense.
so I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out in the rings. Do you guys consider Tool to be a grunge band? If so, well, there you go. If not, feel free to let us know. But regardless, we are done with another band list. Surprisingly, this was actually quick compared to the other ones, so and that was pretty
Have
nice.
been vanquished. Hell yeah.
And thank you for Lisa joining with me on this one. It was a pretty nice
You,
endeavor.
you are very welcome. Yeah, this was a good time. I'm glad I got to show up and do another one of these with you.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, like we said, the next tier list that we'll be doing will be over post-grunge bands. So if there's a band that you thought was going to be on the list, it's probably going to appear on there. So stay tuned whenever you go and watch that. But regardless, though, I hope you guys at least did enjoy this. Especially since we actually got this one way quicker, so that's nice.
Oh yeah.
But
man, we actually got this one done in less than 6 hours. Isn't that
in
crazy?
less than 4 hours this time around.
4 hours. 4 hours
So-
rather. Yeah.
So that's nice. Do you have anything to plug in, or?
I mean, I guess I have a Twitter that I post on sometimes, but I don't have a YouTube or Twitch or anything. No.
Fair enough. I will plug in this though. I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but for those who even give a shit, Hell of a Boss season 2 started today. So
yeah, it finally aired today, and the new the new episodes. It's pretty good. You all
yeah.
should watch it if you haven't already. And if you're a
So
fan of Hell of a Boss.
I just wanted to do that shout out. So, but regardless, though, I hope you guys just enjoyed this entire stream. If you guys did, make sure to hit that follow button down below and turn on the bell icon so that you'll be notified exactly when I'll be streaming. Well, you guys check out the links down below as well, specifically the Discord, which is where we will be posting this, so that you guys can make your own tier list if you are interested. So that would be pretty nice.
And then, of course, I think we'll both be posting our own versions of the tier list in the server as well. So if you guys want
that. Thanks for reminding me. Share share your screen on this.
Oh God, wait, what just happened? Did I just? Oh no, I clicked the save or download button, and it fucking reset all of my choices. Are you kidding me?
No.
Are you kidding me, dude? No,
Did you click on the reset button?
No, I clicked on the save or download button, and it reset all of my fucking picks. What the hell? That's ridiculous. Alright, well, I'll still be posting my tier list.
Yeah. You'll be posting that.
Channel regardless, so.
Yeah, check out the Discord if you're interested. So we'll make sure that next time that's not a mistake that we make. So.
Yeah.
Wait, you're still there? Oh, you're still there. Anyways.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah, make sure to stay around for part 2, whenever we get by that. And yeah, I'll see you guys. Until then, I'll see you guys later.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.